I'm gonna push the go button on YouTube now.
Okay.
And we are live. Don't hang up.
Not hanging up.
What is up, Kurt Schmidt?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, living the dream.
Living the dream. That's usually what people say when they hate what they're doing.
No, I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. It's been busy. Been a busy past couple of years with the business and the book writing and the show and all the family stuff. So, yeah, I've been doing real good.
Good. You got a lot going on for sure.
Yeah.
The first thing I wonder is it Kurt with a U or is
Ah,
it KRT?
okay. So there's a story behind that. So, so my friend, one of my best friends growing up, Rich Hansen, he ended up moving to California and became brand manager at Haro when I was like, I don't know, 17 or 18 or something.
Okay.
And he was working there, and he was living in California, and let's see, I went to a Rampage contest, and I got my first picture in like a proper riding picture in a magazine, and they didn't know who I was, so they knew Rich was from Minnesota. So like, who is this guy? And Rich was like, oh, that's Kurt. It's spelled KRT. And because Rich always thought that KRT just looked better, because he's a designer, artist guy. So so that's how the magazines just kept printing it forever, and so I just kind of adopted it. But it is not legally KRT, but that's kind of what it became. So
Yeah, I wondered about that because I see on Instagram it's one thing, but then you go to like
yep,
Foundry's website and it's the one with a U and
yep,
yeah, so
yep. No, it's kind of was it was the something that just people knew me as back in the day. So I just ran with it. I didn't really bother correcting people. I didn't really care either way.
right, yeah, I mean,
And then all my social handles became KRTS because you can't have um, only a
oh,
3-letter username. So everything became KRTS because the smallest username you can have is four
I
um,
gotcha.
4 letters. So
The mystery is now solved.
yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. A very intriguing, very intriguing mystery.
Yes, such a crazy story. That's funny. All right, well, before we take it super far back, when's the last time you rode?
Oh man, probably last year sometime.
Yeah,
I ride around the neighborhood a bunch. We've got a nice hill outside of my house that's fun to do rollbacks down and freak out the local little kids that some gray-haired guy is out there doing 180s and jumping off of curbs and stuff.
like that Paul guy that we all see floating around on Instagram and
Yeah, he's
Facebook.
great.
You get
Yeah.
tagged in his post. You're like, come on, he's not even that old yet.
He's not even that old. Yeah, no, it's been fun. I'd like to tool around. I still have a Sunday that I ride.
Nice. I was gonna ask you about that. What your current bike setup was.
Yeah, got a Sunday that is like my main kind of like trick bike that
Hmm.
has all 4 pegs and has brakes all over. So
Nice. I'm sure you got a coaster on that.
no, actually, I don't have a coaster, and I got a free coaster on it. What's his name from Flatline Fuel cooked me up a while back um, with a free coaster. I don't even remember what the name of it is, but um, yeah. I mean, the problem with coaster these days is that because all the axles are so much bigger than the old standard ones. So
Yeah.
um, when you try to put it into a newer frame, it just doesn't work. So maybe someday I'll machine something that will allow me to go back and add it. But yeah, no, I always grew up riding coasters, so like that was just the more natural way of riding for me.
It's actually kind of hilarious that you're one of the few people who I would talk to who would make the distinction and hear coaster and think coaster brake and
Oh
not
yeah.
think free coaster. Because to me, when I asked you that, I was asking you if you had a free coaster on it, but to you it means something totally different, which is hilarious.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Coaster to me means brake. And free coaster is no brake.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. And I mean, that's a great place, I think, maybe to talk about the beginnings of ridings. Like
Sure.
when in your riding did you end up putting a coaster on?
My first bike, it was a Huffy or something when I was, like 7, 8 years old.
Mm,
And that's how I mean, that's just what the bikes, all the bikes came with.
right.
Coaster, there was no calipers or anything.
I think even kids' bikes today, a lot of them come with coaster brakes, so
Do they?
they got the pedal brakes so they can
Yeah.
naturally stop.
Yep. So that's how I learned to ride a bike, was with coaster, and then shortly after that, riding around the neighborhood and things, because again, I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, so it was basically like just come home when the lights turn on the street lights.
Yeah.
So we'd go riding for miles and miles just around and do stuff. So it wasn't you'd run into other guys on bikes, and some were older guys that were kind of jumping and doing things and kind of messing around, and I remember running into this one guy that showed me like a BMX action magazine, and I was like, oh wow, like, oh, there's like a whole sport here of racing. So I convinced my dad to take me to a local track and started racing, and that's how I got going. So
Wow. So did you ever switch back from a coaster, or were you just always
no, I had a free wheel for when I was racing. Yeah, like typical free wheel.
right? I can imagine you wouldn't want a coaster while you're racing.
No, no, no. And I was not a good racer, because racing is way more dangerous than freestyle is, in my opinion. Like, it's just way more dangerous. And so I never got as hurt as I did, unless I was racing in my BMX career. So so yeah, I got like a Hutch Pro Star, and I got with the the crazy pedals with that are like the bear trap crazy pedals that would embed themselves in your shin. Those things were dangerous, man. They were so dangerous. But then I remember going to a race at the St. Paul Armory, and it was indoor race, this like big kind of national race. And I remember like at the end of one of the races for the older class, I remember watching this guy that was just doing back wheel hops, and I was like, that is freaking magic.
Mhm.
Like, what? I seriously, like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And he's just sitting there just doing back wheel hops,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, that I have to do that. Like, that's like I have to know how to do that thing. So so that's when very quickly started to move into trick riding and convinced my dad to build a ramp, and then started hucking myself off of that.
That's funny. It's wild to hear people's stories from such a different period of time, but also how similar they really are. Because I had that moment of being at the skate park for the first time and seeing that person and it being like, it's magic. I can't even believe
It
this.
literally looks like magic. Yeah.
Yeah, at that point in time, there's this setup where he 270 to hip, then he 3'd the spine, then he did a bar air that was above coping on the quarter, and it just, I was filming on my Motorola Razr.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and everybody's heard this story, but it doesn't matter because it's my story. And I remember filming that and be like, awesome. And it was from that point on, just like, there was never going back.
Going back.
And
nope, never going back. That's what happened to me, and it was it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So it was like a very but back in back then, like a kick turn would have made me floored. You know what I mean? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I was watching some videos there on your YouTube channel where it was, actually, I think I still have it up.
Yeah.
It was something from 1987, I think, and you were doing, it was a contest from Kurt Schmidt Ramp Run MFS 87.
Yep. Midwest Freestyle Association.
And I was watching that, and the kick turn stuff on the wedge, like one-footed X-up kick turn, and I was just like, wow, BMX is crazy. Like thinking about how far things have come, and just watching like the awkwardness of you go down that wedge and then you have to carefully turn around because you're gonna slip on that slippery floor.
Those floors were slick, man.
And then you turn right back around to do another kick turn, and it's like looking at it and you just think about even just the aspect of like putting another ramp to turn around on.
A whole different type of ramp. Yeah, and it was, and you had to do it because you were scored specifically on how you used all the ramps. Like that was a standard across the freestyle competitions, is that if you never touch the ramp, you actually got demoted. So
interesting. So yeah, you had to go over to that wedge,
and
at that point it had a different name, didn't it?
Yeah, it was I think they just called it a kick turn ramp at the time, but eventually it became a wedge ramp.
I heard short ramp too.
Yeah, short ramp. That's really old. That's probably even before my time.
Wow. Yeah, I heard. That's funny. One of the guys who used to help out at the local shop, Aaron, used to call it the short ramp.
Short ramp.
Yeah, that's so funny. So, at what point did like the props era start? Because I saw that you were in props very early on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, early on, Chris and Marco were doing the Baco, Chris Rye was doing the Baco videos, which, I was in a bunch of those, and they filmed a lot at Standard and down at Rampage, and, I became part of their pseudo, like a cousin to their brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember 411 was the skate video that it started coming out, and Props was like, we want to do 411 but for BMX.
Yeah.
And so Rick and I actually invested in the original Props. Like we took money out of Standard and used it to help them get it stood up, and then I think within like 6 months they bought us out, or within a year they bought us out and took off with it. So yeah, prop stuff, like I was there right in the beginning from not only just riding but also from like a business support. So
wow, that's really cool. So without you, props wouldn't exist, and they just had
Chris and Marco they're smart guys, they would have figured it out.
Okay.
It was just, it was just easy to get money out of us because we were making lots of money at the time.
There you go. Well, okay, so either way though, you had a big hand, and they just had the 25th anniversary or whatever that was, just like yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the work that they had to put in to pump out those videos was incredible. They learned so much in such a short amount of time. Like it was, I refer to like episodes like that as like, it's like an MBA class on steroids. Like you have to learn the business side of things. You have to learn the logistics side of things. The getting tapes from all different places, putting it together, and then shipping it all out like on a schedule. I don't think anybody, just like the rest of us, like when we started the bike company, we had no idea what we were getting into.
Yep.
So,
I was gonna say, you just knew what you wanted to do and then figured out how to do it.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly, because nobody's coming to save you. Like you're on your own.
Yeah, and I guess so we kind of talk a little bit about props. Maybe we could talk about Standard, because that was one of the things that when we originally talked about doing this, you said, imagine we want to tell the Standard story. And so what is the Standard story?
Well, again, it depends on who you ask. It's all different perspectives, because there was 3 of us in the beginning that started it, right? So at the time, myself, Rick Molitorno, and Bill Nitschke were all sponsored by Haro, right? And at the time, Rick was trying to go to them and say, hey, I've got an idea for a professional level bike, and you know, and I'll give it to you, just give me some of the royalties and whatever, right? So for me, you know, while that was all going on, I was trying to make a big life decision. Like, my friend Rich had moved out to California, and he was like, look, you got to move out here because this is where everything is happening, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out there and see about, you know, living there and whatever else. And so I got on a plane and I went out there for, like, I don't know, a week or 10 days. And while I was there, it was great. I mean, it was like an old school rider's dream. Like, we were hanging out, you know, with Wilkerson, and then we went street riding with Spike Jones, and like, I think, I don't remember who else. There was some other Brit there, maybe like a Nick Phillip or something. But it was just great. Like, we went to all these classic places, went to Chris Potts' house, and he had some ramps, and we got to ride there and everything. So, so it was, it was crazy. Like, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to move out here. I wasn't super into it, you know, California, and me, like, California seemed like a really nice place to hang out, and but, you know, there wasn't anything about it that was like, wow, like movie stars and you know, whatever. Like, there wasn't anything like shiny about it to me, other than obviously it would have been really good for my career to live there, because you get in, you know, for the photographers all the time, and get more coverage, and more coverage means more sponsorship, and more sponsorship means whatever, right? So that was the plan. And then when I got back, I remember my dad saying, like, hey, you got to call Rick back. He's called like 4 times while you were gone. And I told him what you were out there doing, and he's like, and so I was like, okay. So I called Rick back, and I was like, what's up? And he's like, I got this idea. I want you to come down here. And I was like, okay, yeah, all right. So I think like within a week or so, we drove down, and it was great, because Rick was like, okay, well, I'm gonna start this bike company, but I don't want to do it without you being a part of it. And I was like shocked. I was like, me, little old me, you know? I mean, this is Rick Moliterno, right? Like, I mean, like, he was a legend before, you know, I was, you know, even in a magazine, right?
Yeah.
So
how old would you have been at that time, real quick?
I was just 20, I think, just turning 20.
Okay, cool.
I think, yeah, 19 or 20. And I was like, well, what, you know, what's the deal? And he's like, well, we want to do this thing where, because we were always complaining to each other. We had a good relationship, because I'd go down there a lot. And I mean, I think in the 89, 90 year, I went through 2 frames a month from Haro. Like, I mean, and Rick was going through more than that. He was going through 1 a week sometimes. So,
whoa.
So, like, you know, I mean, there'd be times when I'd come back from a contest, and there'd be like 6 full complete boxes of bikes sitting there for me at the house. So they were just disposable, really, because
that's insane.
Because they would just, you know, smash up
right,
really, really fast, you know. And again, you also have to think about the time, because I mean, I watch a bunch of your stuff, Brant, and I watch other people, and, you know, they talk about the overbuilt era and all this stuff. And yeah, I mean, the pendulum did swing a little too hard, but also the riding style at the time, like, people were hucking like constant.
Right.
So there was no, like, you know, Chase Hawks where it was like, I'm landing, you know, nose down every time, right? So everybody was just going for it. Like, if you were getting in a contest, or if you were in a magazine, you were going for it. So
yeah,
so the bikes were smashing pretty quickly. But again, none of us had ever built bikes before. Like, we were like just fix it, throw everything at it.
yeah,
you know? And so so he's like, we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna make frames and blah blah blah. And he's like, Bill here's got his peg company, which was really successful at the time and becoming even more successful. And he's like, he's gonna merge that together, and Bill's gonna run the parts division. I'm gonna run the frames and the geometry and the materials and the manufacturing, and you're gonna do all the design and advertising and branding and all of that stuff. And I was like, this sounds great, let's do it. And so I moved down there, probably within just a few months, and started living in Iowa. That's when we started it.
Whoa. Is that like the origins of kind of your, I mean, you got definitely the most professional setup that anyone I've talked to's had. So is that the start of stuff like that for you?
Yeah. I mean, when I got really into, obviously I was always kind of an artist, and a really terrible one, but graphic design I really enjoyed and really spoke to me. And one of the first things I got was a Mac when we were starting the company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my dad bought it for me. I think it was like $6,000 or something crazy at the time.
Well, that hasn't changed anyway.
Yeah. Right. And I got a scanner and a bunch of other stuff and then so I basically had to go to school in not like traditional school. Like I had to start going to these printing companies that were doing the CMYK separation of the film that I would have to send for advertisements in the magazine. And they were so gracious, because over the years they'd be like, oh, this is how you got to do the bleeds.
Oh,
no, you got to go back and do this. And so I had a real good opportunity by being a business owner, by bringing in just crap and being like, help me fix, please. That I learned a lot during that time. And so, but over that course of time, I got even more interested in video. I was making short films and biking videos, with the big VHS camcorder and all of that. So I was always into video and photography and design. And so, yeah, that's, I mean, when I left the company, like that was my passion, was design and technology. And so that's kind of where my career has gone ever since then. So it all started really with having to figure out like how to do ads in magazines. Like I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and BMX Plus wasn't very helpful, but Brad McDonald at Ride, when he started that was great. He was super helpful on helping us figure it out.
Nice. It's crazy that it comes from Rick being like, you're going to be the marketing guy.
Basically, yeah. Basically, yeah. He's like, you're artsy fartsy. Like you do that. You do the design. You make it look good, and I'll make it ride good, and Bill will make sure that everything else around it is great.
And was it like? Did you guys do what you set out to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, everything took 10 times as long as we had hoped it would have. So, which is the story with every bike manufacturer out of the gate. So, we were lucky we had Bill's pegs, and he had tons of ideas for other parts, and Rick had ideas for parts like stems and different things, and new ways of doing brakes. Because he'd pulled those what are those brakes off of old mountain bikes or whatever, like big cantilevers. Yeah. And figured out how to make them work with a POTS modification, right, to go through the stem. And so it was just constant innovation, right? But the problem is that when you took it somewhere, like people weren't like, oh, I know how to make that thing. It was like everything was from scratch, like every single time everything was new. So
right,
that was the big challenge. So yeah, I mean, we got to do everything we wanted, but it, like I said, it took way longer to get the first prototype frame done than we thought it would, and then to actually start getting, I mean, luckily Schwinn went bankrupt during that time, and we got to work with Waterford Precision Cycles to help us build the bikes, because the employees bought the company back from Schwinn, and otherwise we would have had to go overseas, because at the time we had no designs on building a machine shop. You know, obviously Rick has one now, but at the time, like, that wasn't even a thought.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like all that innovation did it help make it easier to do the marketing side of things?
Yeah, it did, but you know, we never talked about the products. That's um, we really very rarely showed the products in our advertising. It was mostly all attitude and style.
Yeah.
Uh, being a 20-year-old guy, I made designs and things that would appeal to me, and there was nothing about seeing a pair of forks on a page that excited me. You know, so so we'd have people dressed up, or we did crazy stuff. I mean, we got Ride BMX in so much trouble with our ads. So one time we convinced Brad. So what we did is we did a fake BMX Plus cover for an ad, and I think we called it like BMX Puss or something, and it said like it had like this salacious like TMZ style headlines and goofy stuff, and like a barcode that was actually like a sex line number, and so like it was just all just wacky. Anything we were thinking of, we just threw it all in there. And then we convinced Brad to print it upside down on the back of Ride magazine.
Oh, no way.
And so what happened, we thought it'd be super funny because, you get it and you'd be like, what's this? Oh my God, that's so funny. It's like two magazines in one. But apparently, like, when it went out to distributors, to like Barnes and Noble and all that stuff, they were putting the magazine the wrong way. And I remember getting a frantic call from Brad, just so mad at us, like, you screwed me, and like, what? Like, no, like, I had no idea this would blow up. Like, it was a mess. And BMX Plus after that wouldn't even like refer to us ever again. They were so mad at us.
Wow.
Because we were making fun of them. And but that was it. Like, that was the whole thing, was like, how could we do stuff that would be interesting to us, would get us excited, and stuff that we thought was funny. And then turns out like a lot of other people thought it was really interesting and funny, because if you look at the designs, like, they started out very, trying to seem professional, but I moved very quickly to more of a paramilitary sort of look and feel with a lot of things, right? Like, we took, we had like Apache helicopters on shirts and motors, and nothing to do with BMX, but it was all the stuff that we were interested in. I mean, we're already on a BMX bike. Why do I need a shirt that shows a BMX bike on it? You know what I mean? It just seemed dumb to us. Like, we're like, let's show cool stuff, like and things we're into, right? So that was kind of the genesis.
Huh. So knowing everything you know today about marketing, how do you look at that approach from your perspective today?
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, there's a great Steve Jobs thing where he talks about why Apple became so big and why Nike became so big. And he says exactly that. Like, they show you what they're about, not what the product is. And so Standard was, at least in, we knew the product was good.
Yeah.
But just going out and being to other people like, this is better than whatever else, right? Look at how much better this is than that bike. Like, nobody, it didn't matter. Like, we knew it was good, so we didn't have to talk about it being good. And so, but what we wanted people to really understand is like, what did we stand for? What were we into, right? And it was for having a great time and smashing things and having fun, and and being taken seriously. That was important.
Well, I definitely think it worked, considering that Standard's still around to this day.
Still around. Yep.
The Standard Army is still strong.
Yeah, the Standard Army. Yeah, I mean, they're like all that stuff, right? Like, we had the Standard Army. There was a big series where we did Standard Country, right? Kind of built off the Marlboro Country, for those of you who remember the cigarette stuff. But that was it. Like, we were selling an image, an idea, right? The products were good. So, show it, and you see it. They have them today, right? Where it's got like, this new sprocket, and there's all technical drawings of it and little arrows that point to like how it's machined within a 0.000 millimeter of like, yeah, whatever. Like, show me what people can do on that hub.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want.
I've never even thought about BMX from that perspective. I'm sitting here thinking back to all my news where I'm talking about a product promo, and I'm like, yeah, but they didn't even show the product in the promo. Exactly. Like, it's literally just some dude riding a bike.
Yeah. Well, and again, there's pros and cons to that, right? So, I mean, we did have like a catalog and then eventually an online thing that did have specs and all of that stuff, right? But that wasn't the first thing you were presented with. You had to be interested in what is this thing? And then you look a little deeper and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see. Like, it's got this kind of geometry and it's got this patent pending dropouts, and
yeah,
blah, blah, blah. So,
but
it was fun. Yeah. I spent most of Rick was completely responsible for, the actual bike stuff, the parts and the choices there. Like, obviously I would ride them and test them out and be like, oh, this rear end's too short, can't spin, whatever. But he still is. He's a genius when it comes to bike geometry. So that's one thing that made them last so long, right? Still even STAs to this day, you'll see people on a Stronger Than All that, they're fantastic. They'll last forever too.
Yeah. So how much did that affect or like make riding even better whenever you immediately switched to these bikes that were just all of a sudden way better and you'd have to worry about breaking the bike?
Yeah, it was a whole new world. Like, it took a while because you were used to when you'd slam on something, you'd be like, oh man, my bars are bent, or the forks are raked for sure, or my rear dropouts are twisted, rear triangles twisted. I know it. And no, it because I was learning, I'd learned 720s on old Haro, and I twisted so many rear triangles, learning them, that when now you just had this level of confidence going into much harder tricks, then you felt you could go bigger because you had more confidence that your fork wasn't going to snap out from underneath you as you come down, right?
Yeah.
So you were more focused on the tricks, and that's when I think that's what helped progression move very quickly. Because if you look at all the progression up to like kind of 1990, and then you look at the mid 90s to the 2000s, like it's a very different type of riding that there was beforehand, and I attribute a lot of that to the confidence people had on the bikes at the time.
That makes total sense. I could see exactly where that would come from, just in the fact that you didn't have to worry so much. You could focus on what you're doing, not like, what am I going to do when my frame snaps when I land right now?
Right, exactly. And honestly, it was better for riding. It was cheaper because, I remember we went to Interbike, and some industry people were like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, a bike with like, that won't break. Like, how do you sell that kid more of them, And it was like, no, that's not our business model. Like, is to sell throwaway bikes, but you saw like that again, like, kids younger were coming up because they could crash and throw their bike and it wouldn't break, and so they wouldn't all of a sudden have to go back to their mom or dad or whoever and say, I need new handlebars. Well, we don't have any money for that, that's, skateboarding is such an easy entry sport. It's like $150 and boom, you're off to the races. You're doing tricks and, but BMX, it's like, oh, this is $700. Like,
yeah.
And so you break something and, you're 18 years old and, what do you do? Like your part-time job at Starbucks help with that? Like, no.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You break a frame and you gotta, when you do eventually break a frame these days, it's gonna cost you
It is going to cost
$400 or $500 today just to get a new one, and that's definitely a barrier to entry.
It is, and that's one reason why BMX has always been smaller than skateboarding or scootering or all these other things. It's just a higher cost of entry. You know, I know so many people over the years that I run into, and they're like, yeah, I used to ride bikes and just, you know, I just couldn't afford it, and you know, like after a while, and I'm like, what's this $3,000 mountain bike you have here? Well, now I'm 37 and I have disposable income, and I'm not going to buy a BMX bike. I'm going to get a mountain bike, right? So I think I don't remember who was recently on your show that talked about that, but it was a really interesting conversation about how, you know, that BMX isn't like in the mix as much as choices as scootering and things like that when you're at that prime age of, you know, meeting up with friends and stuff, right? Because BMX to me like was about friends first and tricks second, until I turned professional, and then it all flipped on its head, right? But but then, you know, it became you know what I mean? Like if it was if I'd run into a bunch of kids with scooters, I'd probably be scootering. I don't know.
Yeah, it was the thing that presented itself. Like if that person who had been doing the hops or whatever they were called, I forget the name, but if that had been a guy on a skateboard doing kickflips or something, there wouldn't be as much fakey free coaster progression.
And maybe that'd be a good thing.
TJ Henderson would be totally different.
Yeah, he's so great, isn't he?
Oh my goodness, he is amazing and such an awesome person.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. Yeah. That's why I say, like, you know, again, everybody has different opinions and crystal balls and whatever. I'm just, you know, that was my experience. So, you know, it's an expensive sport to really get into.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I mean, to close the chapter talking about Standard, I listened to a podcast today that you did in 2009.
Ooh.
Yeah. I was actually really liked listening to that, but you kind of mentioned a little bit, but it seemed like what you were talking about is that life kind of opened a new chapter for you. And, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about that at all.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, like I said, the, you know, turning pro and doing that and competing and stuff just grinded on me really quickly. I didn't like the idea of, I liked competition, but I didn't like competing. You know, I didn't. And then when the X Games showed up and like they wouldn't even let you practice like the day before and things like, I was like, that's it. Like if this is the future of this, like that's a show. That's like worldwide wrestling to me. It's not me and people I know trying to out trick each other. That's a different thing. That's what the Rampage contests and the two hip contests and the Hoffman contests, you know, they were people that knew each other. You didn't really hang out each other. You probably, you know, you didn't necessarily not dislike each other, but it wasn't like you were going on trips together, but you respected each other and you just tried to out trick each other. And that was the thing versus what X Games and all that stuff did. And again, nothing against the people that are in those things. I enjoy those things. I've been to a bunch of X Games. It's great for those folks. It just wasn't for me. So, but I was so, I started to get so excited about design as a career and development, because I got into software development as well. And that really scratched a creative itch I had. And at the time, to be honest, like, it sucked to go bike riding. Like I would go to a place and there'd be a bunch of dudes there and then I'd start riding with them. And then all of a sudden, after maybe 15 minutes, everybody stopped riding. And so it would be just me riding. And then I realized like, oh, I'm putting on a show, I guess.
Oh.
And so that started to happen pretty regularly. Like so if I went somewhere, I'd have to ride by myself or with people that were not necessarily at a level to push me all the time. Right. Because like you ride with Moliterno every day, like you are getting pushed, like
right.
You know, like you know, you just trying to keep, him in your line of sight takes everything you got, right? So coming from that and then moving into sort of this more sort of casual thing, but now, like, I'd been in magazines and I had been in videos and people knew who I was before I showed up. More people knew who I was than I knew who they were, right? It was a weird feeling, so it wasn't fun to go riding with folks anymore. And like I said, that was part of the huge fun that I loved about bike riding. So what I got more interested in was the design and development side of things. And so eventually, like, I went to school for design, night school, and it was really hard transitioning from an athlete to like the real world, right? Because it didn't work the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was cool because the school actually offered me a job teaching, so I taught there for a little while. And then I went to work for a bunch of agencies, and then about 6 years ago, me and a couple other people started this agency called Foundry, which I'm at now. I'm the president of, and we're about 30 people in size, and we do custom software development and design as an agency. So user experience design, mobile apps design, all that stuff. So that's what I spend my days doing.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious if we, I don't know, talk about like how this whole going away from Standard to do that happened too.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, there's no people problems, Brant. There's only communication problems. So
I mean, that's true.
So I think what ended up happening was, so I was living down there and I was working every day with Rick, and then my father had gotten diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And I was like, I've always been really close to my father. He was my hero. And so when I found that out, I was like, well, I want to go and be around him more. So we had literally just gotten email. Like, email was like so brand new, but we were like figuring out how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I was going to move back, and then I would work from, Minnesota or whatever. And then just over the course of a year or so of doing that, like, just the things broke down, right? Like, things were moving fast down there. I wasn't part of every conversation. It just kind of, the communication just broke down. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm not really into this bike company stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, when I was younger, like, I was way more arrogant and just an idiot too. So, I was kind of a spoiled kid, and, I learned a lot from doing the bike company, and being around the industry taught me a lot more about what my self-worth actually was, and being more humble,
Yep.
But, to be honest, and not to ramble, but like, I was bullied a lot as a kid, like a little kid. And so I had built up quite a chip in my teens, and so I was quick to go after folks who showed any signs of that stuff. And sometimes you just end up, because if you grow up around that, you just end up looking for it. And even then when it's not there, you see it. So anyways, so the communication just kind of broke down, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not having fun. I don't want to do the contests anymore. I don't want to do X Games, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like kind of an alien when I go back to the bike company, because I'm not there working every day with everybody else. So it just made sense for me just to step back. But then about two or 3 years later, I joined back up. Rick hired me as the creative director for a number of years. So I came back and I designed shirts and stickers, and and that's when we did like Rolling on the River video and things like that. So
Okay, that all makes sense.
yeah.
So I want to go back and talk about riding. We have talked very little about riding at this point. I don't know how it's possible, but you are a lip trick guy. I want to know, did that just like, is that where you naturally kind of went? Because obviously I saw these videos from 87 and that point in time where if you're doing a lip trick, it's on a freaking massive ramp.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
How do you go from that type of riding to doing a 3-tap bar spin to fakie over
Right.
a street spine.
Well, it goes back to kind of how we grew up, like in because at those contests, everybody competed in everything. You competed in flatland and you competed in ramp. It was it was actually very rare if somebody only did ramp or only did flatland. That was actually much more rare. Whereas nowadays, right, it's really rare. Who's that guy that I really like? Matthias, the French guy.
Yeah,
Like,
flatland street
he's
guy.
badass. I love that guy. I've never met him, but like it's just like he's, you know what I mean? Like there isn't anything he can't ride, sort of guy. And you kind of had to be that person back then, right? So when it came down to doing flatland tricks on top of ramps, like it just made sense, right? So, and because you already had the balance from the flatland and you already had the balls from being able to go up ramps. So, and I always liked jumping. Jumping was like my favorite thing to do. But I loved I just loved the choreography of lip tricks. And again, riding with Rick, I mean, we'd be there 10 hours a day.
Yep.
Riding on a mini ramp and just pushing each other. Like Rick would do a 360 and then I'd try a 540 and then he'd pull the 540 and then I'd have to spend the rest of the night trying the 540 and then he'd do the 540 no footed, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do no footed can 540 and it would just go, and I mean, you were thinking of tricks. I mean, I would get up in the middle of the night and drive down to the skate park and open it up and be like, like one night, like I was like, I bet on the, on the double coping spine, I could jump over to ice pick and then fakie out. And so that night, like I made up that trick and did it for the first time. And then I was like, and if I lean back in, I can jump over ice pick and then back in. And then I remember like the next day, like unveiling it, to Rick, like I was out like, yeah,
So awesome.
And he was like, don't come here at night anymore.
Listen, punk.
But it was things like that, right? So it was constant. What can we do with this, right? Because it'd be like, the benefit of lip tricks is that crashing can teach you new tricks.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. So you're like, oh, wait a second, the bike turned this way. I bet if I hooked my pedal there, I could spin out of that, or you know what I mean? So it unlike jumping, when you crash, you eat it,
Yep.
Whereas lip tricks can actually, screwing them up can open new doors because you're like, oh, the physics of this is possible, right? Like I don't have to do a tail whip nose pick. I can do a boomerang nose pick because I just kick the bike the other way or
Yep.
whatever. So, and that's where like backwards stuff and all that things started the same way. It was like, oh, these physics just make sense. So
yeah,
let's just do it.
Yeah, and we'll get there. We'll get to the backwards stuff. I know exactly what you're talking about though, just with filming some of the stuff I do where it's like, oh, I messed that up, but this goes this way. And it's funny. So you were intentionally inventing lip tricks, but it was more so like, did you know that nobody else had done this before, or was it more so just like, all right, I'm competing with Rick and it just so happens that it's something no one's ever done?
Yeah, it wasn't where we were never really thinking about other people. Like it was really like us versus ourselves.
Yeah.
More than anything. But yeah, I would go to contests and do stuff and people would be like, holy crap. And I'd be like, what, you never done that? Like,
yeah,
it would be surprising to me sometimes. Like I remember the first time, and again, I don't mean to go down the backwards, but the first time I did like a backwards thing at a Hoffman contest, I remember thinking like somebody had dropped, I was like, Miron must have dropped in and done something over the spine while I was here, because the way the crowd erupted, it was so like loud. And then I realized like I'm the only person there. I didn't realize like everybody lost it when they saw that. And to me, I was like, I've been doing this for, a while. Like,
yeah.
And to be honest, I felt like at least a quarter of the people in the audience or the, watching had seen it before too. I don't know. So
Yeah, well, it's just so cool to hear about that because that almost feels like the most pure thing of just like you guys are competing against each other, and it just so happened to be that nobody else in the world had done this stuff before that. I don't know. I think it's so amazing that that is the result. And like even John Boltjans in the chat here said you blew all of our minds when you came to the King of Concrete in '93.
Yeah, when I went to England, for example, like it was so intimidating because I'd never ridden in a foreign country before, but it's like Britain, so you're like, it's kind of like the U.S., but you know, with no ice in the drinks.
Yeah.
So so I went, I remember riding and like nobody talked to me. Like nobody talked to me. Nobody would talk to me. I'm being a goofy guy. I'm up on the deck, hey, woo,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot, plus I guess there was a lot of Germans up there too. So they were very serious. But I remember like, I was practicing and I was doing stuff. Nobody says anything. And then I do my run and like the whole place is like losing it. Like, blah,
Yeah.
And to be honest, like some of the stuff I was doing was like, I didn't feel like it was, I don't know. I mean, it was stuff we were doing all the time, right? Like
Yeah.
no footed nose wheelie across the deck. 540 tail tap bus driver in with no tail tap, right? Because that was the thing. Like Rick and me would get on each other's like ass about.
I was gonna ask about this.
About hops and stuff like that. Like it had to be clean. Like it didn't count if there was hops or pedaling or like it was like dead serious at for years there. Like it was like that's not considered pulling a trick. So it was a weird time, man.
That's not weird at all because myself and my buddy Sponge filming for Lip Lords, our video series is all on that one quarter pipe with just lip tricks.
Yeah.
That is our mindset. And it changes for him with a 5 tap because he's brakeless, so he just gets one hop because he's brakeless. But if you watch that video series, there are very, very, very like the most minimal amount of tricks that have any kind of hop or correction in them.
Yeah.
And I noticed that about your videos when I was watching today. I was like, I wonder if this is intentional because everything
100%.
is perfect.
Yeah, 100%. Like it was, and so because you would, like I said, that's all we did, like 10, 13 hours a day for years. I mean, that's all we did was ride those ramps. I mean, we didn't go out, we didn't go get drunk, we didn't go partying. I mean, we did, but like, not too much, and we wouldn't drink at the party. We just like set something on fire or somebody would poop on the hood of a car or something.
Yeah.
And whatever, like we got rowdy, but like we were back in, the lab, as they say, the next day, so.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
But yeah, going to England was such a fun time. I mean, they were just so gracious, after we got to ride, and it was great because Mira was there with us, and I didn't even know he was coming, and Mira had stayed with us in Iowa for a while, because before he started his bike company and stuff, like Rick was kind of courting him to come on Standard, and Mira was really into cars, and Rick and I were really into cars, and so we just bonded a lot, and it was just so great showing up there and trying to go find food that wasn't like beans and toast, like it was fun. Sorry, John.
He's here now. He understands.
It was good. It was a good time, and I got to meet such fabulous people like John, and now I've had friendship forever because of that. So
yeah, that's so cool. So all right, let's talk about the coaster.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about the coaster. So
let's talk about it.
When did you just realize randomly that you could do this stuff from a fakie, or what? Like, how did this even work?
No, I mean, when I growing up with that first couple of bikes, like we lived on a house that had a really steep driveway. And so since I could ride my bike, I was always trying to like roll backwards down the thing, right? And then as I got older and older, like it became, like, let's see how far down the road I can go backwards, and it just became a thing you did when you got bored of trying to learn tail whips or whatever. Like you just sit there and tool around with that stuff, right? But what I didn't realize is, like, you're training your muscles over and over again to get better and better at that stuff, right? And then and I'd always thought about doing some backward stuff, and then I remember early, like 89, going down to ride with Rick at Rampage, and he was doing stuff where he'd be going at a mini, and he'd do a 180 and he'd roll up backwards and he'd like nose pick and then come in and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And and then all of a sudden, like, it became more normal to have spine ramps that had ramps facing each other, so I started trying to do more of that stuff. And but yeah, I realized, like the bike, it's perfectly it's just a matter of speed, really. It's perfectly natural. You can do anything you're going forwards, you can do it going backwards. It's just really how fast can you get going.
Yeah, and we have people like TJ and Bobby Altizer.
It's crazy for me to watch these guys because they all stand-up rollback, which freaks me out, man.
And you sat down for it.
Oh, yeah, no, I had to sit. I mean, I couldn't stand up like those guys. Like, that's crazy.
My buddy Jeff Mead, he sits down. He does similar fakey stuff too, and he sits down for his. But thinking about it, Bobby and TJ stand up.
Yeah, because the hardest thing with the backward stuff is that you have to think about it as two separate tricks. There is no one trick. There is the backwards part, and then there is doing the trick. So if you're thinking, what I realized, if I was thinking about doing the trick while I'm rolling backwards, I would screw it up every time. But if I focused on the rollback, and then as it hit the ramp, then I'd switch my focus to, now I'm going to do like a tail whip or a nose pick or whatever, like, then it worked really almost every time. And so it was really became more about a mindset of realizing it's two tricks at the same time. And I don't mean like a double tail whip type of two tricks at the same time. Like, it's two very separate things.
It's like sequential.
Yeah, right. So like tail whip and a bar spin, right? So you have to focus on doing the tail whip, catch it, and then you can think about doing the bar spin,
Yeah, I mean,
so same with backward stuff.
Just like any trick you do in a 5-tap, where you hit the 5-tap and you wait till you get to the right spot to do the other trick, and then it makes sense. That might help me, because I swear it feels impossible to. I just want to do a fakie to double peg, and then I'll be able to go from there, and I just cannot get the pop off of the ramp to get in the right spot.
Yeah, just try starting lower. That's what I would tell you. Lower on the ramp, then higher on the ramp. It's really, it's much easier when you're going up to go from the first third of the ramp up to the top than it is to go from the last 2/3 up to the top, because your momentum wants to keep carrying you over the higher up the ramp you go. So if you try to hop earlier at the base, you'll get up. It'll bring you up more than it'll bring you over.
Interesting. So this just became a how-to, and thank you, because I need it. I really want to do. I want to be able to do a fakie into one of my ice picks and do all the crazy stuff, but I can't.
Raise that seat post and sit down. That's what I'll tell you.
Oh man, I think I wouldn't be able to fakie sitting down.
It's the only way I could. It's the only way to do it. And the funny thing is with the coaster, because I remember like the East Coast guys, they weren't so as impressed with the rollbacks as they were manuals. Like, I would do manuals all over the place, and they were like, how do you manual with the coaster? Like, I have no clue how that works. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I've always learned to wheelie and manual with a coaster. Like,
that's funny.
Because with the backward stuff with the coaster, if you sit down, you can lighten your feet on the pedals, right? So you're not like as much when you're sitting.
Yeah,
that's what's so hard about the stand-up ones. I mean, I guess probably today the free coasters are much more they're much better in terms of their play.
Yeah.
But at the time, like, free coasters, like, if you even thought about moving your foot forward, they catch in like a second, So at the time, like, the coaster was the best for me to do the backward stuff, because you come down and you just pump down as hard as you can, with all your weight going forward as you're coming down the ramp, and then you just immediately kind of slide back into your seat, and then you lift, you lighten up your feet, and you just kind of look over your shoulder, and as soon as you hit that ramp, you pop, and then you go. It's great. It was great.
Well,
it was the most fun ever. Like, honestly, I at one point, like, all I wanted to do was ride backwards. I didn't like riding forwards anymore. Like,
you could tell from your videos.
Yeah, it was just way more fun. It was just way more challenging. You know what I mean? Like,
so what you're saying is that you mastered riding bikes going forwards, and it got too boring, so you had to start over going
it's
backwards.
Quite the opposite. That's what I told people all the time. Like, I couldn't do very good forward tricks, so I had to come up with backward stuff, and get good at that. So, but that was the thing. Yeah, like, I did get known for a lot of that stuff, but I still, if you look at some of the other videos, like, I was pretty good jumping.
Oh, for sure. You're doing sevens and 3 turn downs and truck drivers, and
it was fun. Like, I enjoyed that stuff. So, but like I said, like, eventually, like, that became like what I was really passionate about. And then again, thinking about going to the X Games at the time, where everybody's like flipping and flopping and whatever over jump boxes, like, I wasn't gonna stand out, just doing some backwards stuff and this. Like, I think the riders would care about it, but ESPN wouldn't care about it, and what else? What's the other point of being there other than to get on TV?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me to hear all of how conscious you were of the career and business side of being a professional rider, and like hearing in that podcast talking about your awareness of how the main photographers are in these spots, or they're gonna be in this spot, so you go to where they're gonna be. And I don't know, I think that there's so much of an emphasis put on just like letting things be as they are, and obviously the freestyle aspect of it, but there's also something to be said of like, if you want to make this happen, there's an element of being aware of how
that was my goal. Like, I wanted to become a professional bike rider, like, in all respects. Because like I remember like one of the only Minnesotan at the time who ever went to California and turned pro came back and told my friend Dale, who I was riding with all the time, he's like, yeah, and you got to come out, you got to be, it's amazing being out in California. I was just in freestyle and 101 tricks video, blah blah blah. And Dale's like, great, yeah, maybe me and Kurt should come out. And he was like, yeah, I don't think Kurt's gonna make it.
Oh, that's motivation right there.
Oh, it was, yeah. It was motivation enough that I went inside the house and cried. I was so upset. And my mom actually went out and kicked the guy out of the yard.
No way.
So not only was I embarrassed that I was like crying about, like literally crying, but then my mom kicked out like this pro bike rider out of the backyard.
How many other people could say that? That is hilarious.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. But at the time, like, that was like somebody saying like, you'll never walk again, or you know what I mean? Like,
it's serious.
So it was crushing to me, because that's all I wanted to do, was be a professional bike rider. So to your point, I became a student of what it became to become a professional bike rider. It wasn't just about the stuff. I mean, I was lucky because I had relationships with guys in a senior class to me, like Moliterno and Wilkerson, and just a bunch of the guys, that would tell you things and show you things, They were like, that, don't worry about that so much, worry about this. And
and so
there was a bit more mentorship at the time.
That's what I really try and push with some of the stuff I do, and just like trying to guide people, because so many people try to say like, oh, there's no blueprint to being a professional BMX rider. That's BS, because there's definitely a blueprint to it. So like, to mold my model even further, it's like, yes, be yourself 100%, but you can also set yourself up by, if you're at the park or you're at the contest and you see the photographer, hey, I got something for you.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no, you have to be If you look at some of the more famous people, like they're all good at what they're doing, but they're also showmen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they put on a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's exciting. I mean, look at even people that people never considered as good as a Matt Hoffman or Jay Mira or whatever, but they're still remembered and loved to this day because they put on a damn good show.
Yeah.
And they got people excited about what it meant to be a bike rider, and so like that's super valuable. But again, yeah, to your point, like there is foundational aspect of like, you go through these hoops, you can go through them upside down, you can go through them backwards, you can do it, but you got to go through these hoops. You got to get coverage, you got to get a sponsor, you got to win some contests, you got to be in some videos, you got to upload, you got to be consistent when it comes to whatever. Like you can do it, but it's but again, it's it's up to you. It's nobody's coming. There's no BMX fairy that's going to come down and just sprinkle dust on you and all of a sudden you've got a signature shoe.
There's very, very few chosen people who that happens with in BMX, and it's like a perfect storm of like they had magically not been seen up until this point, and they just got to be this super incredible rider. I feel like that happened with the kid a couple years ago, Josh Dove from Australia, who's just like totally mind-blowing, and then all of a sudden he shows up. Same with Corey Walsh, similar type deal, where like he's just totally incredible but somehow kind of uncovered or not been seen
people
yet.
love those stories, man. I remember Josh White was the same thing when I was younger. Like all of a sudden it was like, this guy out of the middle of nowhere in Oregon is better than Mike Dominguez. Like what? Like nobody ever heard of him. It was crazy. People love those stories, but again, it's the media is pushing it and hyping it up too, right? And so it was up to Josh to lean into that hype. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
true.
He could have pushed back on it and been like, no, look, I've actually been to a bunch of contests. People like, I just haven't been in a magazine before. It's not like I've actually been, like they say, overnight success takes 20 years to get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you look at, but again, like it's those people that do that, and then they get put on these pedestals, and then what do we love to do? We love to just throw some damn rocks at those guys. You know, as soon as they start getting like that signature Adidas shoe, and they're featured in a Super Bowl commercial, like, man, we love to hate those guys. We love to go in and just knock them down, because jealousy is so real when it comes in. And that was something like I was so glad social media wasn't a part of when I was when I was doing stuff, because I mean there was definitely haters, and it wasn't because of your riding, like it was because you were on Standard or you were from the Midwest,
the haters just couldn't be as loud back then as
but I mean again today. Like we all know what it was. I mean it was just guys who couldn't, they couldn't get attention from their bike riding, so they got attention from being dicks.
Yep, and that still exists to this day.
No, really? I don't believe it.
Listen, why'd you keep riding a coaster even though they were so bad?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and again, I remember a guy, I don't know why I'll say, well, yeah, I mean, of course you could do a bunch of that stuff because you were sitting on your coaster, and I'm like, here's a coaster brake, go try it.
Dude, they're deadly. They will kill you.
Like, if you think it's easy, here's my bike, go try it, show me. And they'd be like, no, I'm not. I remember being in St. Louis, some dickhead was like, yeah, well, I probably could do that stuff on a coaster. I'm like, here, man, here's my bike.
Yeah.
Go. And I remember he's like, okay, and he like, I think he dropped in and just flipped over the bars. First thing, he activated the coaster on the way down, and he just ate it. And I was like, that shuts you up.
Yeah, coasters are dangerous. That's like a real question. Like, what did you just love the tricks enough to deal with how bad they were?
No, it wasn't bad for me. Riding a freewheel was dangerous for me. Like not having the comfort of being able to just stop myself on a dime was so scary to me, because in my like I told you in my race days when I was riding freewheel, I had so many scars on my shin from slipping a pedal, and then that pedal just nailing me. And this is way before we had shin guards and hammer guards and all that stuff. So you were just taking it, man. You were taking those spiked pedals to the shin.
Oh my god.
And like that, you were just, you know, there was no, you know, and so to me, the ability to stop that from happening, because that was, you know, that was the thing you know what I mean? Like, you don't slip a grip, you slip a pedal. You know what I mean? You don't slip your seat, you slip a pedal, you know?
Yeah.
So to me, like, having the coaster was just it just felt way more, I felt way more solid.
That makes sense. I was more so talking about like the quality of them. Did they work?
Oh god, yeah, they were terrible.
Yeah, you loved it enough, and you felt like the positives were worth the.
Well, you'd have to get them, and you have to weld them, because you'd have to weld the arm to the nut. Like they always needed to be modified, and you always had to have like 5 or 6 of them sitting around, you know, because depending on what you were learning, like. And then when you put the new one in, the brakes were so sensitive that it would take a couple of weeks to wear them down, because then you were even if you were great at coaster, like, you were still catching yourself, you know.
That's scary.
And doing whatever, but yeah, I don't know. You just got used to it, you know.
Yeah, so you dealt with a lot of the crap with them, like it was worth. That's.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even today, there's a couple people who still have one that's floating around. Like my buddy Trevor ended up borrowing Brett Down's coaster brake, and he had it on for a little while, and then he just sent it back. He's like, enough of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's also different, like, you know, because I ride my seat a little bit lower now, so with the free coaster makes more sense, but with the seat higher, having the coaster feels better. You know, it's just about where your knee placement is and how your legs sort of frame the bike, compared to like how much play you have in your wheels and the way it feels. Because again, like, if you're riding short ramps, right, you've got a lot of compression when you're hitting them, versus a big, you know, like a mega ramp, right, where, like, I don't even know why they put chains on those bikes. Like, or sprockets, like, just put some sticks and pedals and let's go. Like,
oh yeah,
you know, but for like, you know, riding minis and smaller ramps and things like that, like all of those little details, like moving your seat an inch, can make a world of difference.
That makes sense.
So, you know, if you're ever having problems learning new tricks, try moving your seat around. That's the first thing I would say. And then second, change your sprocket, and maybe your caliper placement. Like, do some tweaks around your environment. You never know what could be actually messing with you. So
yeah, there's been a couple times where I've had to change my seat post height and my seat angle, actually. To even like the 5-tap no foot can that I did a while ago. I had to lift the seat and angle it downwards so that when it was upright, the seat was more flat and I was able to sit on it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so like when I was learning Miami hopper nose pick to bar spin, you know, I couldn't have my seat lower because I had to grab my seat and do a Miami hopper in the middle of a nose pick, and then I had to use the seat as a handle to help hold the bars up as I threw them to then land. And so, like, I remember learning it and being like, oh, like, I was constantly adjusting my seat to match to make it work, you know.
Yeah, how dialed did you have that trick?
Easy. It was easy after a while.
All right, people, you hear that?
It's not difficult. Again, it's 2 tricks. You first learn the Miami hopper, like nose pick. It's super easy to do. Like, you know, the bike kind of, you know, as soon as you let go of your hand, your bike wants to do that. It wants to twist together, you know, so you don't really have to force it. And then the next thing you do is you use the seat as kind of your handle, and you pull up on it and throw the bars and.
All right, Trevor, I know you're listening to this, Trevor. That's your mission. The Miami hopper nose pick to bar. He's the only person I know that does Miami hoppers on a ramp anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'll do He'll do them on like a double coping spine where he'll put it on the peg, or he'll go up on a quarter and do it to fakie.
Oh,
He did a 540 nose pick Miami hopper.
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that one was crazy. But yeah, I
Yeah,
just
it
wanted
was yeah, towards the end, like I was doing nose wheelie Miami hoppers, you know, like
what?
to like to then bar spin in like on, you know, on like platform spines or whatever.
Oh, you mean like rolling nose manual and then go into the hop?
No. No, you as soon as you get up, you grab your seat and you lean way forward, and you don't crank the bars together as much. You kind of, they're still kind of askew.
You were rolling in a Miami hopper?
Well, sort of, you know, yeah, it wasn't like a full on like, you know, Dave Norrie Miami hopper, you know, or whatever, but yeah, like holding on to the seat while comfortability thing, it's not a difficult thing.
Okay.
You know?
It just blows my mind to even think about that, because I've tried to go into the motion of the Miami hopper and I'm just like, nope.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing, like, because, you know, once you're learning how to jump things backwards, it was like, well, how can I do backwards nose manuals, backwards tooth pick grinds, backwards manuals, backwards ice pick grinds, opposite peg manual, or opposite peg bar, you know, ice pick grind backwards, you know, like, it was just, you know, you're on your bike so much, like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to learn everything the opposite way now.
Yeah. So what was your most, like, the unicorn trick of going, like, a backwards trick for you that you pulled, and maybe one that you didn't pull?
Yeah. One that I don't think I ever fully landed was like, you know, backwards decade over a spine. So you go, it's basically like you go up backwards, and then it's like an under whip.
Like you land back, you pull up back tire.
You pull up back tire, your under whip, but you turn and then you come in straight.
Yep.
Down the other side.
Makes sense.
So like a smoothie, but you know, whatever. That was always challenging, just because of I knew I could do it if I could get the speed to do it. But the thing is like every place I went, like the setups were so difficult. Like I remember Dan Sieg had this great place up north of here, but it was an 8-foot quarter with a 4-foot box on it that I'd have to abubakon to go and hit a 6-foot spine.
Oh my gosh.
So it was traveling at super high speed, and at the time I remember like I had a T1 for one of the, you know, an early T1 that Joe had given me, and their rear triangle was so short you couldn't roll backwards on it. Like you would just immediately, as soon as you started rolling backwards, you just tip right over. And so finally I got off of that thing and got a bike with like a regular longer rear triangle. And I know why they did it, because they love tail whips and stuff like. So but yeah, I couldn't roll back with that short triangle. So I was trying to learn it on this 6-foot quarter, but it's just, you know, it's a lot of work to jump up on a 12-foot you know, ramp just for your setup, you know, do it.
Totally makes
like over. It isn't something you want to do like 16 times in a day. So but yeah, there was things like that, like actually, you know, backwards bars or backwards tail whips, backwards bar spins, landing backwards, you know, not trying to do it but not turn in the air, because that's the hardest thing to do with those backwards things, because your bike naturally wants to turn. So doing 360s and half cabs and all that stuff is pretty natural because the bike wants to do that. But holding it into a fakie, that was the hardest thing. So probably, yeah, like some of the hardest things were like the bus drivers and things like that, and I only pulled small amounts of that stuff.
So you mean fakie up the quarter and then just do like a hop bus driver, or
no, sorry, no, like jumping the spine and
and doing it in the air over the spine backwards. Holy whoa.
Yeah, no, like, and that's what I was saying, like the decade and stuff, right? So
yeah,
so you come up and the bike, like I said, the bike naturally wants to go like this.
So you're talking a half cab decade to go straight,
and then you go straight in. The bike wants to do it, like
You
just have
don't.
to jump off the bike and turn away from it. Like,
Whoa. I thought you meant pull up onto the back tire on the spine and
oh no, no,
then
no, no.
pull a
Sorry,
decade.
no.
You meant just a straight up half cab decade over a spine.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That would have been crazy.
Yeah, it was hard to do because the way when you come back in, you're so over the front of the bike that, and then you're coming down, and since your knees are way up in the handlebars, like landing like that is really hard to do anywhere close to the top. So you'd almost have to flat out to do it, and it just didn't feel good. Like I'm sure it looked cool, but it didn't feel good to do. So
yeah.
But same with like, but I could do I could do bus drivers, like half cab bus drivers over the spine, half cab tail whips.
Wow.
I pulled a few of those. Half cab 540s.
And we're talking about big spines, right? Like,
Yeah.
Holy crap, dude. That's even today. Like, if somebody had that in a video part today, it would still be crazy.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to see. That's the thing is like, it's funny because I always felt like a bit of a misfit because, for years, like after I stopped riding professionally, like nobody was doing, I just thought like, oh, if this is good, people will start doing it.
I think it's just too hard.
Well, I didn't think it didn't seem hard to me. It seemed like people didn't appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I get it.
And not saying I never felt it. Don't get me wrong. It felt plenty appreciated, and I still do. I still have people running me like, "Oh my God, Kurt Schmidt," and I'm like, I did this much in the sport, So, the thing for me is that, doing those that type of stuff just felt so much more different. It felt like magic again. Whereas trying to do one more extra tail whip in a jump didn't feel like magic.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool, don't get me wrong, I'm not coming down on those. I don't want to be one of those old guys that's like, hey, guys in their flippity flops and their
and their backflip triple
their cash rolls. I got your cash roll. I think all that stuff's cool, and I couldn't do it, but it, that I would have had to be a different rider to do that. I would have had to been more of an athlete, like somebody who goes to the gym, and has like some muscle milk and whatever, you know what I mean? Like a serious athlete,
Yeah, and I don't know, it kind of sounds like you just wouldn't have been yourself either.
No. I was a goofy, skinny kid, too tall to be riding BMX bikes. No.
So, speaking of all this half cabbing and stuff, I talked to Carl Hinckley on the phone earlier, and he had a memory of seeing you half cab a whole box jump at the pit. That happened?
Yep.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was great because I had an awesome, like, those turnaround wall rides, right? The short transition, big long, right?
Yep.
But they had one that had like a really nice, it wasn't like a super short, like a boom,
Yeah.
It was like more gradual. And so it went up like a good, like 20 feet up the wall. So I could really just get barreling backwards down the thing, like I could just go try to touch my tire to the ceiling and just come, boom, like just, and so, yeah, I was like, and I didn't just jump. I think I cleared the whole box. I didn't like,
wow.
I didn't just like hit the transition. I was going, because once you popped it just right, like you were gone. You know?
You're sailing at that
like
point.
Yeah, exactly. You're sailing. So.
Wow, I would love to see somebody half cab a whole entire box jump today.
Oh man, what a feeling it was too. Honestly, like again, going back to that, like, because back then, I was doing backwards, like, backwards 180 to Fufanu, bar spin. I was starting to do more back wheel, backward stuff because that's when stuff got hard. Because front wheel stuff was easier, just because I felt like your body wants to move forward in the bike as you're coming up. So back wheel stuff was like, that was like going to be the hotness, right? So learning how to do that, like backwards to like 540 tail tap and things like that. But you needed, like I said, you needed a setup ramp that was like, you know, whatever.
It had to be just right. And there's a few places like that I could see someone doing. There's a couple places at Ray's I could see somebody half
Is there?
cabbing. Yeah, the box jump in the resi room. I could definitely see somebody half cabbing that, especially because it's not the vert wall that you turn
Yeah.
around on is angled in that room, so it's even less of like a death to
Sure. Okay.
going straight up and straight back down. You're angled, so you're coming. Yeah,
Yeah. That would be
somebody,
magical.
please do it, someone.
Stuff. Yeah. Somebody go and do it, and then tag me.
Because when Carl told me that you half cabbed an entire box jump, I was just like, no freaking way. That is
I forgot about that.
crazy. And like, how big of a box jump was that?
Oh, I don't remember. Like, I don't remember. Standard 90 size.
So it was like 8 feet, 8 feet maybe.
Yeah.
That's so far. Because I can't even half cab a pyramid. I try so hard. Like, this is probably funny for you to hear, but like, there's an indoor skate park that opened near here that had a perfect little quarter pipe, and then there's a pillar on the wall, and I would double tire that to fakie, and then try to half cab this A-frame. Literally no gap. It's a point.
Sure.
And I could not do it for years. Like, I tried it multiple times, and I just couldn't do it. And then finally, I got them somewhat down now, but hearing a half cab over a whole box. Amazing.
Yeah, it's like I said, like, but again, it's, you know, it's discipline, man. Like, I mean, what else are we doing except for doing a boo-boo and rolling back up a ramp like for 10 hours, 8 hours a day? We'd stop, go and have Subway, come back, do it again, you know, like in 7 days a week, you know. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the bike company was doing pretty good. I mean, we were making in the beginning, like, you know, I mean, just the axles alone were just making so much money, like the original axles that we had sold, right? Because they'd cost like pennies, and then you'd sell them for like $6, you know, and then the bike shop would mark them up to 8 or 10, and you know, we were getting them in by the pallets because people loved the heat treated axles because there was nobody else that had heat treated axles.
Yeah.
You know? So and we were buying them in bulk, like literally like half a train car, you know, full of axles.
Oh wow.
Like, he's crazy, you know. So yeah, the backward stuff for me has always been just something I'm really proud of because, you know, it was just like a journey that I went on that I tried to explore. How far can you go with this stuff, right? Because Rick was doing a bunch of backward stuff back in the day, but he, you know, he wasn't he didn't get obsessed. It was just another thing for him, you know. But I just kept going and going and going because I was like, this is really interesting to me, you know.
Oh yeah, and there's still only a few people who are really pushing and trying that stuff.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, I truly think more people could do it. They just, you know, they just gotta work on it more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
no, yeah.
You know, it's not like doing a triple flip, you know.
Yeah. That's either do or die.
Well, yeah. I mean, exactly. Like I learned flips, and I was like, this isn't fun to do. Like, you know, and I certainly don't want to do them in contests because I have to do one. So.
Right. I just got a really good question in the chat. Jason Taylor said, "Did Kurt ever get to ride with Rob Ridge?"
No.
Oh, what a shame.
But I followed Rob. I've been friends with him on Facebook forever, and no, he was. I mean, we're probably not that. I mean, he's definitely younger than me, but we're not that far apart. But I think I had moved away from like standard and all that stuff by the time Rob was really riding a lot more. But yeah, I follow. He does great stuff, like tons of great stuff. I watch all of his stuff on Facebook. We're friends on Facebook, so it's great. Like he's got like exactly like what it looks like when you're watching route. That's what it was like for us. Like you just sit there all day riding on this spine, just
Mm-hmm.
trying shit like all
Yep.
day long, you know.
Yep. And his stuff is magical too.
It is, yeah. It is,
Totally.
yeah. Yeah, and and he's got a good style about it too, you know, like he's not super stiff, and you know, you see half these guys, they don't bend their knees, and it just looks like they're, I don't know, looks like they had like a pipe up their butt, you know.
Yeah, I can.
Like,
No, I can see that.
you
They're
know,
just
and that
doing
was
the
the thing,
trick.
like, because that's how I grew up, was like BMX was as much about style as it was tricks, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
then as it got more, it became more about tricks and less about style, right? And then of course there was always the people, everybody loves Brian Foster and everybody loves Chase Hawk and whatever, but you know, are they going to win an X Games or whatever? No, because they're not doing triple flaresies,
Right.
whatever, but they'll win best rider awards because people
People
think
love them.
they're amazing at what they do, right? Like one of the most popular BMX pictures ever, is Vic Murphy doing a one-footed tabletop off of a curb.
Yep.
It's like it's the iconic BMX photo of the last 40 years, you know.
Yep.
There's nothing that most people can do a one-footed table, like, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
but that's not what that picture represents, you know.
No, that is literally probably, if it was voted on, it would end
Oh
up
yeah.
the most iconic BMX photo of all time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's honestly like it's still to this day, like, it sums up everything about bike riding for me in one picture. Uh,
Yeah.
so and you know, I feel honored to have been a part of all that. I love the BMX stuff. I still try to, you know, like I said, I try to participate online as best as I can, right? I mean, I've got a business to run. I've got 4 kids.
Mm.
um, recently wrote a book and launched the book, and then I do a podcast and all that stuff. So I stay pretty busy, and but I still try to stay in the scene and keep an eye on what TJ's out there doing, right? You know, got to keep an eye on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And John, um, um, you know, crazy Scott, um, you know, you got to watch out for him.
Yeah. So, since you brought the book up, let's talk about the book.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
do you have one right there?
I do.
I was hoping you would.
I do actually. So
Tell
yeah.
me
So
about it.
anyways, so I've been, you know, running this business for a while, and you know, I started my first business when I was 20, 21, and you know, the thing for me is that when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were getting laid off, and you see a lot of a lot of layoffs are happening
Right
now. I
now,
mean,
yeah.
Microsoft just laid off 10,000, 5% of their staff. Um, because I've been part of tech and all that and managed people for a long time, I saw people always had the same problem when they were trying to find jobs or look for jobs, is they thought like I did when I was a kid, which is you submit a resume and then you wait for them to show up and tell you you have a job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned is that networking is way more important than job searching is. And what I found is that because of the pandemic, the way that we networked has changed, between this kind of hybrid model. So I wrote a book basically about my advice and system that I use to do networking, and it's called The Little Book of Networking. So there's my name, and
Nice.
it's a little book.
And it's actually very, very important, even just from the BMX perspective, because networking in BMX is what people say it's all about.
Yeah, well, it is. It is. That's how I built my career in BMX too, is networking. You know, being at the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, not being too embarrassed to go to Wilkerson, you know, and be like, hey, how do I, you know, how do I get a chance to come and ride the 2-hip ramp?
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh,
Yep.
well, you want to come over tomorrow? Like, yeah, I do. Shit. Like, oh, I actually have to show up. Like,
Yeah, that's how easy it actually is in BMX. Where
it can be.
if you want to do something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, like, I wrote the book because I was doing a lot of career coaching with people, and I thought back to my career, when I first got started, really trying to find jobs and things like that. Like I thought you do what everybody else does, is you submit your resume and then you wait for them to pick you. Well, this book is meant to show you how to get, how to have you pick yourself first, and then other people will show up and be interested in it. So yeah, so I launched it on Amazon. It came out a week ago or so, and it's been it's been in the top 100 for like career guides and things for a little while. We had a big book release, and I'm really excited. I'm really into the whole book writing thing. And it's been cool, like especially books, like seeing like the Concrete and Smog, like photo books and Emulsion, like seeing all these older guys doing books and stuff. Like I'm excited for more of these folks to be doing more BMX books. But to me, like, I think it's really important, whether it's being a professional athlete or a professional designer, developer, professional YouTuber, whatever you want to be, is that your network is your net worth. Mm-hmm. So if you're not investing in it on a regular basis and you don't have a system to control it and manage it the right way, then you're going to be behind. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's funny, when I went to school in Columbus, it's the Columbus College of Art and Design, for cinematic arts.
Yeah.
And I can remember just being annoyed with people talking about networking, because it was like they were just robots repeating what they had heard, and I don't think that they actually understood what networking really is.
And that's why I wrote this book, because everybody, when I bring up networking, they're like, what, go get a name tag and go to these cheesy events? And I was like, no, it is about delivering value to people and consistently delivering value to people. While you're doing that, you're letting people know what you're looking for at the same time, and asking them to keep an eye out for you.
Yep.
And you're consistent about it, because in today's day and age, consistency beats strategy every day of the week. So that's why the networking and all that makes a difference. Again, I attribute it back to being an athlete with the biking, right? Like consistently practicing backwards tricks made me good at backwards. Consistently practicing 360s allowed me to do 720s. Like,
yep.
So
and I think everybody who's in BMX networks to a degree, and if you want to go anywhere in BMX, you want to go anywhere outside of it, if you can connect those dots and just realize the networking that you do in BMX, like going to, like, for instance, this past weekend was Winter Welcome Jam at the Wheel Mill. Going to Winter Welcome Jam at the Wheel Mill and just talking to everyone there, like you naturally are going to do anyways, and make friends with all these people. You make real connections, you have real conversations, and I think that for some people in BMX ends up being more valuable than anything, because of the diversity of people who ride. You end up meeting people from all these different professions. So I feel like most people in BMX who really end up, knowing a lot of other BMX riders all over the place, they know a guy for something.
Yep, exactly. But the thing is that because, and maybe it's a Midwestern thing, we're bad at asking for things. So, what I encourage people to do, especially in the book, is have a script together of what you're looking for. And what you could be looking for is nothing of value. It could be, I'm looking for more people like you. Mm-hmm. Do you know any other people that are like you? Can you introduce me to those people? It could be that you're looking for more introductions. It could be, it doesn't mean you're, or it could be looking for a job. Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a job in this thing, right?
Yep.
And again, like I said, like my dad always taught me, you get 100% of what you don't ask for.
Yeah.
So if you're not out there telling people what you're looking for, then don't expect it to show up.
That makes total sense. I mean, that's why they say the squeaky wheel's the one that gets the grease.
Right. But again, like people are like, oh, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be annoying. Like, yeah, don't be like that. But also, don't be, don't sit and have a pity party while you're streaming Netflix when you could be out meeting people and growing and building your whatever you want to do in life, So,
right.
I ain't got time for that sort of shenanigans. Like,
yeah,
ain't nobody coming to save you.
That's the truth. And
so build your network, and that's like a sheet of armor you can put around yourself, that when you do have a need, something big happens, you can pull that card out and play it, and say, hey, everybody that I've been trying to provide value to for the last few years, I have a need,
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna definitely make sure I put the link to the book in the description. What do people gotta search, like, on Amazon if they want to find
just search for Little Book of Networking.
Little Book of Networking. Yep. Well, I mean, I don't want to end the conversation there, but I wanted to talk about the book since you brought it up.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I want people. I'm not like making like money off of this thing. I mean, I hope to pay for the printing of it, but really, I truly believe that it's a 100-page book. Like, you read it in like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I wrote it specifically to get people to actually read it. Like, there's a version of this that's like twice as big that I wrote, but I was like, you know what? I just want to get to the good stuff, and not bury it, as they teach you to do in writing classes, is to bury the stuff in there a bit.
So they gotta dig.
Yeah, so you got to dig a little bit. You kind of weave it into personal anecdotes, and and you can charge more for the book then, right? So, anyways, if you have on Kindle, it's like $2.99. So
I saw on Amazon it was like $3 or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Kindle, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. So, so if you want the digital version, and I think if you want a paperback version, it's like $15 or something. So,
is there an audio book?
Not yet.
Are you gonna do it? Are you gonna read it?
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna do it.
You better.
I got the Shure SM7B here. Like, I'm ready to go, man. So, but the funny thing is I've learned so much going through the publishing process. That's been such an eye opener.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that they say is don't release the audiobook until like 3 months after the book has been released, because it's like this wave of like attention they want you to build. So there will be an audio version, but my publisher, for business reasons, is like, wait a while. So, but I'm excited. I'm already starting on the next book, and just gonna keep rocking and rolling with that. So, and the company's doing great. And back to the networking thing. I mean, we built a multi-million-dollar company, and we don't have a single salesperson. Like,
Dang.
it's all networking. We did 5 million last year. So
that's amazing. So maybe if that book does good, and then the next one you're working on does good, you can release the big book of networking.
That's right, the big book of networking. It's gonna be like you gotta have like a little dolly.
Yeah.
To pick it up. Like, it's gonna be the biggest book of networking. It's gonna be great.
So before talking about what else you got going on today, I wanted to bring up something. If you have time here, do you have more time? Can we keep talking?
I'm good.
Cool. You, in this podcast from 2009, you hit the nail on the head about contests and X Games and things of that nature. So let me make sure I get this right. You talked about noticing a decline in things based on events like Mega Ramp and things of that nature in X Games, because you said that it makes it more about the show than the skill, and you could not have been more spot on. And I think that it's only progressed further in that, and I think I mean, what have you still think that?
Yeah, I do, because I'm not trying to, I'm just going to use this as a reference. I don't want people to think like I'm comparing apples to apples here. So if you think of like wrestling, right? So there's the WWE, WWF, or whatever that puts on the show, right?
Yeah.
That is like Monday Night Raw and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And in the world of wrestling, you can have, you also have the local events that like happen at the Armory and whatever. These two things can exist in the same space, because the audience accepts that this is a big show, and that this is like a local, I can go down to the old VFW and watch some guys on the weekend beat the crap out of each other and pretend to be wrestlers and get into my little manly soap opera thing,
Yeah.
But in BMX, it's kind of one or the other. You either have the big show or you have the little contest series.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for the little contest series to get money to invest in good prize money, good prizes, um, whatever, when it's all being vacuumed up by the big show, because what's that guy,
Martin.
Logan Martin. I mean, he's not going to go, if he's got the Olympics coming up, he's not going to go get hurt at a local contest for $1,000,
Right.
Like, why would he? He's a professional athlete. Like, he's a machine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he's not going. And so the only way that you can interact and understand him is through the TV. You can't go and see him at your local armory where there's a local contest series going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's also hardly any of those local contest series where you build your way up like there used to be with the American Freestyle Association. So you'd have the local AFA affiliates, and then once you qualified in those things, then you could go to the big show, and then you went to the big show, and it was, you know what I mean? It felt like a graduation, and it felt important,
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And real quick to interject, John asked if you would ask if you would sign his paperback book for him.
Yes, okay. I will sign the shit out of shit.
There you go.
I don't care.
But
I'll sign them all.
So on those lines, have you heard of the USA BMX Freestyle Series?
Yep.
So that's something that is hopefully bringing.
But you see, because BMX, it's a cycle, man. So when BMX kind of died, that's when Hoffman stepped in and is like, okay, cool, I got this, bro. We're going to do a series. We're going to do it legit. There's going to be money. Mm-hmm. There's going to be sponsors. There's going to be judging. There's going to be like the whole thing. And he stepped in and he's like, I'm going to do this. And then ESPN's like, ooh, that looks cute. We're going to do that now. Mm-hmm. And so here we are. ESPN's like, not so much, the mega ramp is probably the only thing that's getting any attention. And now we're throwing, mountain bikers on it and whatever. So now's the perfect time for these things to come back. It's a cycle, man. That's how it happens,
No, it makes sense.
So it makes perfect sense that right now there's going to be some more grassroots sort of contests that go around, and now there's going to be a little bit more money available for them because I don't have to, as a business owner, let's say I'm Chris Moeller or something, right? Like, that's attractive to me, because that's how we did it in the 90s, right? So we would go to how did we sell so many bikes? We would go to a place, we'd find the best rider at the skate park, and we'd give them standard stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how it became huge. Because we'd find the best person at any given location, and we'd be like, here's like 4 t-shirts, here's some handlebars, here's some pegs, here's like 3 hats, and they'd be like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever. And so when the other kids would show up and be like, who's that best guy in the place, it's that guy wearing all the standard stuff.
Yeah,
he's not even sponsored, right? But he's an ambassador, he's representing, and he's more than happy to, because he feels special. You know what I mean? Like, it's, but again, like, that grassroots sort of thing takes people going around and being a part of the scene,
being proactive in it.
Yeah, like the people running at ESPN are not going to like local contests like some sort of basketball scouts, like looking for the next hot person,
Makes total sense.
So I think those things are awesome. I hope they bring them. I hope they bring them in every state. I'll go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's ambitions to do more and more with it as they can expand.
But you watch. You'll be sitting here 10 years from now, and it'll be like, MTV has bought the rights to all of their stuff, and now it's a whole new show.
Yeah, I'll be interviewing Shane. I'll have the same haircut. And
yes, yes, you'll have the same haircut, maybe just more gray in it, unless you start dyeing it, like
it'll be green.
Then but yeah, it's a cycle, man. It's what happens. I mean, the same thing happened. You see it in all professional sports. It happens. There's these, these cycles of like excitement around them, right? The Michael Jordan era, right? Bo Jackson. You just go down the list. So
Do you
I think local contests are the most important thing to bringing BMX to the level it needs to be. It should deserve to be at. Like
I would agree.
Like local contests. I don't care if 5 kids show up. Doesn't matter. Give them free T-shirts, and have it consistently. See you in a month, or see you in 2 months when we have Series 2, and then at the end of the year we're having the best overall winner, and whatever. And you create that culture. You create that yourself. You don't wait for some BMX god to show up at your place and install a mega ramp.
Yeah.
Like, you go do it. Like, stop pissing and moaning. Like, go throw a contest. Like, get some clipboards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not hard. It's not hard.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Like, half of these BMX places, you call them up and say, I'm doing a little series, and you show that you're halfway serious, they'll probably send you some free stuff, and you can give it away.
Dude, it's so easy. I think right now might be a little bit more difficult just with the state BMX is in, but at the same time, maybe not, because that product that companies are sitting on could be used as advertising that could come back. But
Sure.
It's so easy in that all you really have needed in the past was just a flyer and to have asked them with enough time notice.
Yep, exactly. Because once you start telling one group of kids, they're going to tell the other group of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to go all over the place. And now with social media, it's fantastic, right? Because it just spreads so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, but I heard about contests in Kansas City well before the internet. You know, you get on a mailing list and you get a letter in the mail that would say, like, hey, there's these contests happening. Or you'd have a zine back in the day, right?
Yeah.
You'd get a zine, and that would show you what was happening around, and you'd be like, oh wow, I didn't even know people rode in that part of the world, you know. And then you go to Fargo, North Dakota, for a contest, and you meet tons of people, and they'd be like, oh, that's so cool, you know, thanks for coming to our contest. You should come to our contest. What contest? Oh, we're having a half pipe contest. And anyways,
so
but I think that's how BMX thrives, is not from big corporate money. I think it's from people like you, and you know, the regular Joes saying, like, hey, I'm throwing a contest, you know.
You don't end up getting that big corporate money until you build up from that base, and then there's that cycle you talk about where you build it up, and then the people who are around at that right period of time get to take advantage of that big corporate money.
Exactly. Yep. And it's a cycle, you know. So again, I mean, there's guys out there that are just social media riders, and there's guys out there that are just but that's no different than there was before. There was guys who were just show riders. They just, on bike show tours, they never entered contests, but they were great in shows because they had their routine and they did it over and over again. It was great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I take it from what you're saying, you pay attention a good bit to what's going on in the BMX world still.
Well, I keep an eye on it, sure. I mean, I have a vested interest in it. It's a big part of who I am. It helped me get to where I'm at. It gave me the confidence that I didn't have as a youngster, you know, when I was being bullied, and it taught me how to be self-resilient, how to fight through pain, physical and mental. You know, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be as resilient as I am without it. So, I'm very interested to see what happens to it. But I'm just like any old crusty bike rider. I have tons of opinions that nobody gives a crap about.
I give a crap.
Well, thank you, Brent. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work you do, because there's not a lot of people out there that are putting in the effort that you are. And I think what you're doing is, if you stay consistent with it, is going to be way more important than you even know it will be. I promise you. Some guy will be sitting with you 20 years from now going, man, why did you start doing news about biking? What was that idea about? You know, like,
God, I mean, that's not like a goal, but I mean, it would be amazing if that happened. It's just I don't know what it is about me, but I have to be 100% consumed with BMX in every single humanly way possible.
Well, you're just a naturally curious person, and I think that's why people like watching your show so much, because you're playing the role of them because they're very curious, and you're just you're just a very curious person. You're trying to figure stuff out. So is everybody else, and so you're asking questions, and people identify with it. And yeah, I think you've got a great style about yourself and the way you present yourself. It's great. I enjoyed watching the show. I subscribed. So everybody watching this, subscribe.
Oh, I can publicly thank you for being a member on my channel.
I am
Thank
official.
you for that.
I am official club card carrying member of the Mooresketeers, as I'm going to call them.
There you go.
Mooresketeers.
I really appreciate that, because hearing everything you have to say and the story you have in BMX, and then you saying stuff like that, means a lot, honestly.
I'm telling you, man, it's the stuff you're doing is more important than you know it is. And it was the same for me. I had no appreciation for how important doing the Standard Byke Company was at the time. I had no idea how important like the backward stuff and how long that stuff would carry on. And
yeah,
I had no appreciation for it at the time, so.
Right. So somewhat on that topic, like when you were filming video parts, did you consciously say like, all right, I want to film this trick, or was it more so just someone was filming what was happening at the time?
No, we we'd usually have a menu, like I want to capture all these things. It was I want to go to these 3 spots because I want to try these 4 things,
Yeah.
But more, about half the time it was stuff that you had done before and you just want to capture it. The other half of the time it was like, well, I know a place that has a rail that's like twice as long as the one I did, so let's drive an hour to Rockford and do that,
Yeah.
So, but then, because you were filming, once you got there's no backing out.
Yeah.
Like you're going down that rail one way or another.
That makes sense. It was just something I was curious about, because it was like a thing that you really had to put effort into doing just to film something.
Oh yeah.
In BMX back then. So
oh yeah, no, we didn't have we weren't walking around with cameras in our pockets.
Yeah, so that made me just wonder if like how intentional things were with.
You had to be really intentional. It was sometimes it was like a movie shoot, like Rolling on the River, right? Like I storyboarded out like the first half of the thing, like, you know what I mean? Like like these are the places we're going, this is what they look like, these are I need 3 banger tricks for each location, and we can't leave until I get them, you know what I mean? Like you had to, and we have to get there at the right time of day because the lighting has to be good. And again, this is just with crappy Super 8 cameras. Like
yeah, John says you don't want to waste the tape.
You don't want to waste the tape, but you were doing anything you could to make it look like a real movie. Yeah.
So. That's interesting. Because I've heard people say that their video parts were mainly just, somebody was there with a camera capturing what was happening at the time. But I've also heard other people say that they're very intentional and they wanted to film certain tricks.
No, we were very intentional because it would be like, this is a filming day, and so you picked out what shirt you were gonna wear, you know what I mean? Like you see it today, like in some of the clips and stuff, right? You'll see guys like all of a sudden, like especially in like skate videos, which I love, like they'll show a guy wearing all white, like white pants, white shirt, whatever. Like that's not what he's normally skating in. Like he's wearing a costume uniform to make the tricks even have that much more flair to them, right? So we were that intentional, right? We'd be like, like, oh, I got to make sure I'm not wearing the same shirt as Rick is. I got to be wearing different colored shoes, even though we have the same shoe sponsor, and because it was a filming day,
Yeah. That
So
makes total sense. I think about that stuff because of videos I've seen online where
yep.
they talk about how like a photographer there's a video series on the Ride channel. It's a skateboard thing
No.
called In Focus, where they're
Okay.
teaching about filming and photography and stuff. And in one of them, they're doing photography, and this photographer is going to a legendary spot where he took this legendary photo 30 years ago, whatever it was, and they were going to recreate it with this skater today. And he's like talking about how much he hates it when skaters are wearing black because you can't
Yep.
see them. They don't
Yeah, you
stand
can't
out from
see
the
'em. Yep.
background. And
Yep, exactly. And that's back to my point, because it wasn't us sitting there just dreaming up like how could we look so cool. It was feedback from professionals, right? I mean, we were, you know, Rick was getting shot on film by Spike Jonze, who went on to like film amazing movies and
do the
stuff.
right thing, literally, like just legendary.
Yeah, like just crazy stuff. Like and so he was like, you know, like he was like, you know, yeah, I mean, they would art direct while things were happening, because it was their name that was going on the packaging, you know.
Yeah.
That said it was a video by them, right? So
Yep.
so yeah, like when I remember like filming stuff for Baco, like with Chris Rye and stuff, you know, Chris was always he was very calm, very quiet guy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But he'd be like, you know, he'd be like, so you gonna pull it? You know, and you're like, I'm trying. I'm trying.
Trying my
Okay?
best.
I'm trying. And he's like, yeah, okay. You know, and then he
Yeah.
just, you know, I remember, because I'd be trying to do stuff like, you know, I hadn't done before. Nobody had done before. Like I remember I was at the Baco thing and I was trying on the Mini. I was just trying to do backwards toothpick grinds along like the wall, you know, and it was hard. Like it's a hard trick to do, like to do it for any length of time. Like, and I was trying to do it for like at least 6 or 8 feet to make it look like a really good, like, flow, right? You know, you come up and you go wah and down, and Chris is like, yeah, you know, you gotta pull it like soon. He's like, I'm getting tired, and he's like, it's getting dark, you know, and I'm like, so, like,
that's funny.
You know, we had to be intentional,
right? I gotta correct myself. Spike Lee directed "Do the Right Thing," not Spike Jonze. But anyway,
I didn't hear you say that.
Yeah, I just wanted for anyone who's gonna yell at
Spike
me.
Jonze, being John Malkovich, and Where the Wild Things Are, and
there you go, legendary. But yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, it's even that way today. My girlfriend does a lot of my filming. She's like, "Come on, Linda." She'll call me Linda. Like, gotta land it. I'm like, listen, you know how this works. You know it's gonna take 3 hours.
Yeah, well, it's good though. You got to have that pressure, you know. Like I said, like we were talking about earlier about nailing your tricks without hops or whatever the case may be. You know, like you know, that was just artificial pressure we'd put on each other. Like there's no rules, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like that just became like the rule. You know what I mean? Like
no rules, but it's a rule. Damn it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, we're punk rock and we're breaking the rules. But man, if you're wearing those types of shoes, like, don't even come near me, you know?
That's the funniest thing about BMX.
Oh, yeah.
It's the against the grain counterculture that will totally hate on you
totally
for being against
you
the grain.
or for having your seat post too high.
Yeah,
you know?
That's so funny.
Like, yeah. Or you've got the wrong gearing on your bike or the wrong crank length. And they're like, what? You know, poser.
That's so funny.
That's all right. I was guilty of the same shit when I was young and dumb. You know, I did the same stuff. It's a rite of passage, you know. So, getting back to being resilient. So
it's true.
Yep.
I'm curious. Who are you paying attention to riding wise today that rides? Just what sticks out to your mind when you think about it.
Well, obviously, like TJ doing the backward stuff is great. But like who I can't remember all the names, so sorry, I'm gonna sound like an old guy here for a little bit. Like,
oh, so old. No, it's okay.
That's is it Smiley guy?
Devin Smiley.
Devin.
Yep.
He's got some really
He's
fun.
going backwards too.
He's going backwards, but he's also got a good he's got a solid style. He reminds me of if Rob Ridge did more rolling stuff, I guess.
I could see it.
You know, it's a very he's kind of stocky and he's got a good low center of gravity. He's just a really good good to watch. And Matthias
Dandois.
Yeah, he just looks like he's having so much fun on his bike all the time. It's fun to watch him, not just because he's good, but he's putting on a show. He's having a good old time. You know what I mean? He looks like the least depressed person on the world when he's on his bike. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But man, there's so many. Whoever's on Instagram, I watch them all. You know. But I love seeing the old stuff when Escamilla or John or those guys post old stuff. It brings back a lot of good memories of what it felt like to be riding at that time.
Yeah, there's a page for early 2000s BMX. We need a page for or just 90s BMX.
Yeah.
Or 80s.
Oh, who's the bunny hop guy? Sorry, who's the bunny hop? The guy who can bunny hop really high.
Brock Rayford?
And he rides. What's that?
Brock Rayford?
No, and he rides he also rides mountain bikes or whatever.
Oh, Brad Sims.
Brad Sims. God, man, I just love the power. It's so
powerful is definitely the word.
God, I just love the it just feels so it reminds me of when I watch him ride. He reminds me of that Vic Murphy picture in a way. It's sheer power and but yet attitude and style all wrapped up in one. He's the whole package, that guy. I love that guy,
Yeah.
Because his stuff is really powerful, but he's also really technical. People get fooled by the power in it, but if you don't see you watch him trying to measure up stuff as he's going towards things, he's really sorting out in his mind how many more inches do I need to move to the left to make this happen?
Yep.
He's a really technical rider, but I don't think people would call him that. So
the post he made yesterday or the day before that, where he's doing a wall ride over a bike rack to 360.
Yeah.
Just doing a wall to 360 off of a flat surface is so ridiculously hard, let alone the fact that you're maxing out your bunny hop before you're doing it, which is in turn putting you in an awkward position, which isn't. So he has to reset himself to be able to do the 360 off. Yeah, it's so crazy.
It's so great, and it's just such a the style. Like I said, total package. That guy, total package. It's great. That's what I like. I like riders that are not one trick ponies. I like the total package. I like speed and style, but also uniqueness. I don't, again, I don't hate on the guys that do quad whips, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I can watch it one time.
That's fair.
You know, okay, there's 4.
Yep.
Okay.
You like what you like,
and but yeah, again, some of these Japanese flatlanders, man, I don't care I don't care whatever they're doing, I'll watch it. It's magic.
Mm-hmm. And the freaking 6-year-olds from over there.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, right.
They're just amazing, doing crazy stuff.
They look like they're floating on air. It's so great.
It blows my mind to see that super young kid doing truck drivers on a 14-inch bike, and you're like, how are your little hands? It's
right, exactly. Well, it's the same thing if you think about Kevin Jones back in the day. He just had a effortless style, and he was doing the hardest tricks there were, but he made them look too easy, and so people would try them and they'd be like, what? No, this has got to be easier than this.
That's so funny.
No, he just made it look effortless because that's all he did all day long, is over and over and over again, just a maniac. So it's good to see. It's good to see those guys getting their recognition and stuff at some of the award things and stuff like that. you know, I wish there was more recognition for some of the people out there. And I think social media does a pretty good job of it. You know, recognizing kind of, you know, the people who maybe weren't the most, you know, who weren't the Mike Dominguez, Eddie Fiola, you know, Dave Mira, Jay Miron folks, you know. But
yeah, that's what I think. If there was someone who had the same dedication to like the early 2000s page, what they have,
sure,
with James, who runs that, if there's somebody who had that same dedication for the other eras of BMX, I think we would have some really solid stuff out there to
yeah,
look at on a regular basis. I mean, there's Shad Johnson's doing it on YouTube.
Shad's great.
He's doing a fantastic job with everything he's doing, which is cool because that's on YouTube, and then the other stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, I really like that stuff. I like the I like the old school BMX guys on YouTube. They're super fun to watch. You know, big bushy white beards like ZZ Top and shit. Like,
yeah, man,
it's just, again, it goes back. It's like, it's so BMX to me. Like, it's so broad, but I can see some little kid being like, oh, old men and stuff, and I'm like, nah, that's punk rock, dude. Like, you know, punk rock's a mindset. It's not a t-shirt, you know.
Yeah, and I think the kids who they get it. I think those kids don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
I think the kids who there's some kids local to me who it seems like they just don't do anything but scroll through BMX Instagram, and they know everything.
Oh yeah, no, I always loved the I always call them the like encyclopedian people, you know, because there's always the characters like at a contest or at a skate park. You know, you have kind of the encyclopedia person who remembers like what kind of spoke nibs like you know, Dave Mira rode at the 98 X Games or whatever. And then you have like the guy who, you know, who isn't that good but has decided just to become a photographer, you know, and that's his new thing. And you know what I mean? Like, there's always that's the same cast of characters.
Oh yeah, every time.
And all the things. But I love the encyclopedians. They're fantastic. You know? You know, they'll tell you the wall thickness on, you know, 92 Tioga tires. And
those kids, they freaked me out for a little bit
when
they first started
too.
coming around, because they'd be asking questions that like showed that they were scrolling through somebody's Instagram from like 6 years ago. And how do you even know what you're talking about right now? But you do.
It's amazing. I wish, again, like we just had the magazines back in the day, but you would literally be almost with a magnifying glass studying, you know, the different bikes. And that's why it's so cool. Some of these old school rebuild Instagrams and things where they're like rebuilding, like, you know, Dave Volker's bike from this blah, blah, blah thing. And it's like, it's so dead on down to even like the scratch on a sticker from that he put on that he got at a truck stop somewhere, but they figured out how to get that sticker. It's just crazy, like the level of detail. But that's, again, going back to, because, you know, we just had these magazines and whatever was in them was like literally gold, you know. It taught us what was cool and what wasn't cool. And that was like your Bible. Absolutely your Bible. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, so you had to follow it. And if you didn't, then what were you doing? Like,
you weren't part of the club.
No. No. And it was very important to be part of the club, because we are so anti-establishment that we needed an establishment to hang out at so we could talk about being anti-establishment. It's very important.
It was funny. So this has nothing to do with anything we were talking about, but I want to ask you before I forget, because you're so into the marketing world of things. What do you think about affiliate marketing in BMX?
I don't like affiliate marketing in general. I mean, drop shipping and all of that stuff, like, just as a practice, you know?
I guess I should be more specific. I mean, more so like, for example, a rider rides for company and has their code that's associated with their name, or that link that's associated with them. Just that part of it.
Yeah. I think it's fine. Again, like, you know, there's all sorts of ways to grow up in the world, right? Like, you know, Dennis McCoy, for example, for a couple of years was sponsored by Adidas, but he wasn't really. Like, there was a distributor that was giving his manager free stuff, and he was told that he was getting it from Adidas, and it's just all a weird thing. And so he started wearing like only Adidas stuff at whatever, and people are like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is when, you know, the big industry breaks into our world and starts taking over. It starts with Dennis and Adidas, you know? And then it turns out it was all just kind of a scam in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Like, not like a malicious scam, you know what I mean? It just
wasn't what it appeared.
It wasn't as real as like it was meant to be. So, so for me, that's my only opinion, I guess, when it comes to like affiliate stuff, like, is, you know, how honest are people about it?
It could be fake. I guess my perspective on it, I've just been preaching about this for years now, because I feel like it's a good way to mitigate some of the problems that BMX has as far as sponsorship goes. And just like the accountability side of it is like, you can see who's doing their job. You can
for sure
give an incentive to people who are doing their job better than others. And I don't know. I've just been thinking about that, and I was curious on.
Well, I think again, you know, it goes back to like what I deal with at work. Like, you can't manage what you can't measure, right?
Exactly, and we can't measure a lot.
Right. So to me, is it more important how many followers this person has, or is it more important to me as a brand how many trophies they have? So I think it comes back to, what is the goal of the brand that's behind all of this? Like, what are they actually trying to be known for, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I could hire somebody who all they do is go to events and just do jackass type stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's my brand, right? We're the jackass guys. And, you know, my guy is going to streak through the skate park naked, and he's going to wear a sticker over his dingling of my company or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then there's the Logan Martins, right, where it's like gleaming chrome, like, you know, it's like it's a perfected race car sort of approach, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to me, I think it goes back to, what is the brand actually trying to do? So hey, Arthur.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I guess my perspective on it has always just been, it's like, it gives the company, oh, there's his hand, gives the company a.
This is Arthur, just real quick.
Hello, Arthur.
He's 6.
Do you ride BMX?
Do you ride BMX?
I don't know.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
Perfect.
No. He rides scooters.
Oh, okay. Well, you be a good boy, Arthur.
Yeah, I told him, don't get involved in BMX, it'll break your heart. So he does have a lot of cool toys.
That's funny. But
yeah, no, go skateboarding. It's a lot cheaper for Dad.
Ha. But I guess where I was just going with that is, it's a way for companies to measure things that are hard to measure right now. And obviously there's always going to be the aspect of like, that dude's doing cool stuff, we want to help that dude out. Sure. But I don't know.
What else?
Okay, last time. Come here. He wants to show you what he's got.
Oh, dude, it's a dinosaur.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh, it's bedtime, silly. Watch out for Millie. Yeah, so like, again, it goes back to if what I'm trying to accomplish for my career as a bike rider too, right? Like, is my goal someday to be an Olympic champion, an ESPN champion, or to start my own bike company or my own parts company or my own shop, my own brand, right? Like, what are my goals, right?
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, like, the problem with most of these bike companies, especially the smaller ones, is that they're barely keeping the lights on in a lot of cases. So watching trends and watching your follower count graph, if it's going up or down and stuff, like, that's not something they're regularly into, you know what I mean? And
yeah, and how do you translate that to sales numbers and where they're
right,
coming
exactly
from?
Like, you can't, it's really hard to. So So like I said, there's no people problems. I said this earlier. There's no people problems, just communication problems, right? So I think it's great if you could figure out a way of communication between you and that brand is in a way that you both agree on is a positive, net positive for both of you. Like it's fantastic. Like it's great. Go for it. You know. But at the same point, like recognize what your goals are as a bike rider. Like for me, all I wanted was to be a professional bike rider. I wanted to go to contests. I wanted to get paid to ride my bike. And when I made that decision, there weren't things like videos like you were in. There wasn't national contests that all ended with a big show at the end. You know what I mean? So I made those goals before then the sport changed around me. So, you know, you have to understand, like, whatever you're getting into now, it's going to be different a year from now.
Yeah.
You know, so don't get too hung up on shit, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, totally.
Because it'll change on you in 2 seconds, man.
Oh, like, for sure. And BMX has had a terrible track record at choosing to hate on the new things that are coming in that before realizing that they could take advantage of them and do better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, don't mess with my sport, man. You know, like don't do it because you're going to tear the world down. Well, you know, maybe you're getting old. Maybe you know, maybe you're the old fuddy-duddy that's like, you know, that way it used to be, you know.
Yep. Have you ever heard about or have you seen these new planetary free coasters?
I heard about them. I think I heard about them from your channel, actually.
Most likely, because that's all I do is talk about these things. I just curious if you'd heard about it.
I heard about it from your thing. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Because the biggest thing for me with the free coasters is the play and how you can adjust the play in them. Because, you know, forever, even some of these really higher end flatland ones that I tried, like the play is just, it's just gross. Like I want zero play. Like I don't want any play between when I'm pedaling backwards and when I'm engaging the wheel to go forward. I don't want, you know.
You don't want the slack of disengage to re-engage.
Yeah, I don't want the play. I don't want the slack in between the two. I want it to be as minimal as possible. And the problem is that because of the way, at least until maybe this coaster, like it seems like it just was hard technically to make that.
Yeah, and these I'll show this one because I keep one on my desk. This is the Alienation Venus. It's one of them. And that's what's beautiful about them is that you can have that minimal quick engagement on it and have, when you're rolling backwards, literally pedal forwards to where you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, one of the first parts we made at Standard was chromoly coaster bike hubs that were machined out of a solid piece of chromoly, like steel CNC, right?
Yeah.
And they were so expensive to make. I think the first one cost us $400 for the hub. I remember at the time we were like, that is like $1 million to us, you know?
Yeah.
Like to get the first hub machine. But oh my God, what a difference that made in terms of moving from that high tinsel Bendix, you know, and Sun Tour hubs to a real 48 spoke coaster hub was such a major difference in our lives. But that's the thing is like the technology is finally coming along. It seems like with like that planetary coaster in a way that doesn't make it feel like you're riding something different, I guess. Like, you know, like it should feel as good as a freewheel, just not making you pedal backwards. You know what I mean?
Yep, and it pretty much does. There's a couple, you know, it's not completely perfect. You'll have a couple hiccups here and there, but yeah, I was just curious if you had heard about it or tried one yet.
No, I haven't, and I would like to though. Yeah, I'm planning on building probably a 24-inch next year or this year. Nice. You know, I'd like to tool around with the boys on that, you know, embarrass them, you know, that it's really funny. Like I've got my 14-year-old kid. He can't believe that's his dad on those old videos and stuff. You know, he he just thinks it's hilarious, right? It's funny because back to my what we were talking about leaving the career, like the people who I know through like business and everything right now, if they find out like I used to be a professional bike rider, they can't believe it. They're like, "You what? No." And then when I talk to like my old BMX friends, they're like, "You run a tech firm?" Like, what? No. Like, it's weird. Like you're in this weird kind of limbo between the two groups of people that know who you are, you know?
Yeah, it's so funny. And then, I mean, I'm sure you still see parallels to this day between what you're doing for work and the BMX side of things.
Oh, absolutely, all the time. And it comes down to, because you know, you and what's the other good show that I listen to, like Our BMX or whatever? What's the one with the dudes in California with the Haro guy?
Are you talking about Unclicked?
Yeah, Unclicked. Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis.
Dennis Anderson. He's great too. I like watching him. Right. Like they're always talking about the industry, you know, the business, right? So like Moeller's done the tour, right? With those folks and you, they had some other industry folks on too. I find it really interesting, you know, because again, it goes back to, you know, whoever you're watching and whoever they assign the blame to is really interesting, you know?
Oh yeah.
Because it's always different, you know? You know, but in my mind, a lot of times, you know, I will always learn to hold up the mirror first. What could I be doing better? Versus, you know, oh, the world is impacting me and bringing me and my business down. I'm not getting the recognition I deserve. Like, well, do you deserve it? Might not. Not yet. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely solid advice there. Is if you have a problem with something, look at yourself first.
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah. Or you know, it's like the bad roommate thing they call it, right? It's like,
no, my roommate actually was horrible. All right.
No, I swear, every roommate I've had has been a total jackass.
It was just this one guy. He ended up moving out. Okay.
Okay, all right. Oh, I've lived with some jackasses. I mean, because again, it was like, you know, biking back in the 90s, there's always a house, right? There was like the FBM house, there was the Baco house, there was the Standard house.
The fat house.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's always a house, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, that was one of my things I loved about the early 90s is going from house to house, you know, like,
yeah.
And seeing what the, you know, like the East Coast Destruction house was like, and oh, there's Lucky and Joe Rich, and this is before like anybody even knew who they were, you know what I mean? Like they're just little kids, you know. And it's just so much fun, you know. It was a great time. And then yeah, I remember like Joe Rich moving into the Standard House for a while, and Taj living there, and then like Sandy Carson living there for a while, and like Robbie Morales living there for a while. Pete Brandt lived there for a little bit. Man, that guy's a trip, man. Woo! He's fantastic, but man.
That's funny. Somebody had mentioned him earlier in the chat. I think they're talking about him still riding or something.
Oh yeah, he still rides. Yeah.
Something along those lines. I can't.
Man, that guy was a character, like straight out of a comic book. He was great though. Like, no, I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody, but
yeah.
But man, did he have like he had a locked in persona, like West Coast guy, you know. It was great. But yeah, the characters that I mean, that's one of the best things about BMX, but also one of the worst things, you know, because we ran into thieves and stuff, right, at the skate park. People steal shit. People try to break into the Standard, and you know what I mean? Like a whole group of individuals, right? You've got a whole cast of characters. You know, you got the thugs, and you've got the jocks and the stoners, and you know
that thing we already talked about of everybody playing their role in it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was John said Pete Brandt is still killing it in his late 40s.
Yeah, he is. He's a machine, that guy. But I remember him staying at the house. Like, he did not like being in the Midwest. I'll tell you. Like he's a West Coast guy through and through. He did not like he did not like the cold weather, and he did not understand us Midwestern boys.
I can't blame him on the cold weather part.
No, no.
That's funny. So, is there anything? I mean, you gave me kind of the rundown on Foundry already. Is there more to say about that? Because it kind of like
Sure.
turned us in a right angle after you.
No,
brought
that's
that
fine.
up.
No, like I said, so yeah, so the work that I'm the president. I'm also a partner and part owner in the company, and we're an agency. We do user experience design, UX. We build mobile applications, web applications. Probably some you might have used in the past, but I can't talk about them because of NDA.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, we've been around for a while, and it's something that I've really been passionate about. Not necessarily about code and design. I do my own stuff, right? Like I showed you, like I went back and redesigned some old T-shirts I designed at Standard.
Oh yeah, you sent me that.
Yeah, I put them on Teespring, and just for like, honestly, the first thing is that where it came from is that I had this shirt with me on it, and my 14-year-old wanted one, and I was like, well, I don't have any, like, and he's like, oh, there's places on the internet, you know. I was like, okay, so I looked, and there's Teespring, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, for like $20 I can get a shirt printed with a picture of this thing on there. So
I've got them all on the screen right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just a bunch of shirts like that I had done back in the Standard days, and ones that probably some people that we never released, you know, too. So
Run KRT.
Yeah.
Brolaroid.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we had to. Yeah, it's goofy stuff. Anyways, I get asked a lot for like old standard sticker, especially these old school guys that are like rebuilding bikes, and they want the original sticker layouts, you know, from Illustrator files stuff. And like sometimes I have to go back to like these zip drives and try and find that stuff, and then what ends up happening is I run into like some of these designs, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember that, we never launched that one, you know. Like there's a one on there with Jane Mansfield on that was called Jane's Addiction, because Jane's Addiction, the band, was really popular at the time, and so yeah, it's funny.
Oh, I see the one with the lady on it.
Yeah,
right there.
Yep, Jane Mansfield. Yep, she was gonna be a big star, and then ended up getting decapitated in a car accident.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
So anyways, so yeah, so with Foundry, yeah, my role a lot is doing like heading up the sales and marketing and side of things, but also leading the teams and hiring people and all of that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. And yeah, we're really good. We're not like a website building place. Like there's tons of those. We don't build websites. Like we're the tool people, you know, like,
yeah, you're doing the stuff that other people are implementing into when they're,
yeah,
I gotcha.
Yep, exactly. So one company that we work with is Quality Bicycle Products, so QBP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they're local to Minneapolis here. They're one of the largest distributors in the world for bicycle stuff, and yeah, thanks to my my roots and knowing a lot of people over there, we got in there and we've helped them build some technology that helps them with their like logistics.
That makes total sense.
Helps them with some of the stuff they do with bike shops and their distribution centers. So and we help them build beautiful design products for that stuff. So it's really cool for all that to come meshing together, you know. Like I love going down there, and you know, because I didn't even know at the time like that they made Salsa bikes and All City and all those different brands. Like they make all those really Surly, you know, like that's all their companies.
Oh, I had no idea.
I know, I didn't either. So and they're fantastic bikes. Like Salsa bikes are legit bikes, All City bikes are legit bikes, Surly bikes are legit, like, and they're all, you know, this company that's like literally 20 minutes from my house right now.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know you were in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
One day
Or
when I
south,
come,
I'm south of Minneapolis technically, but yeah.
well, whatever. One
Yeah.
day when I come visit Park Tool, I have to hit you up.
Yep. Come and visit. Yeah, I'd love to hang out and yeah, Park Tool again. Yeah. Again, it's really funny, you know, like
Wait, have you guys worked with
Minnesota.
Park Tool?
No, I have not been.
Oh, okay.
I've not been, but I'm definitely big fan of the brand though. Huge fan of the brand. I've had a bike stand of theirs for like 40 years, like whatever. Like this stuff is just solid.
It's the best.
It's just great. So that's the one that was the one interesting thing about growing up in Minnesota is that, you know, you have like the Park Tools, the QBPs and all that stuff here. It made for an interesting climate of biking.
Yeah.
know.
Cycling industry is probably pretty big.
It's really big here. Like
Makes sense.
it's really big. But BMX was not so much, you know.
Yeah. So what else? You got a podcast? You still doing that?
Yep, still doing the podcast. It's called Schmidt List. So if you look up Schmidt List, and most of it is geared towards leadership, marketing, sales, business.
Yeah.
It's really a great way for me. I use it as kind of a learning tool, just like you use this, right? Like I get people on and I'm very curious. Tell me about how you do B2B marketing, and they talk to me about how to do business to business marketing, and I learn a lot and it's fantastic. And then I put it out as a show and hopefully other people get value from it. I think that's why I really connected with you, Brandon, like the work you're doing. It's very similar
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
exactly
Like,
the same thing.
yeah, exactly. It's the same reason I do my show. My show is just not about BMX. It's more about business in general. And so, yeah, but I've been doing it for 5 years, 207 episodes.
Dang, nice.
So,
That's
so, yeah.
awesome.
so yeah, I enjoy it. I try to get it out weekly if I can, if not twice a month. And, but yeah, I've been busy with the book and, in
Yeah.
the business. So
How do you find people? Like, is it just people who come up in your life?
That's really interesting. You say that. The way that I find most people is I have guests. I ask guests to introduce me to potential guests.
Makes sense.
So what I say is, you know, when we get off the show, I'm like, hey, thanks so much. By the way, if you know anybody you think would be a good guest, like somebody you've worked with, a boss, a CEO, or somebody that you think would be awesome, I'd love an introduction. You know, ask them if they'd be interested in coming on a podcast first, obviously, and then introduce me. And that's literally like the first 20 episodes were mostly people I had worked with in some capacity in the past. But then I kept asking those people, like, introduce me to, you know, oh, you should talk to Mary, who's our chief financial officer. She has some great stories about career switching from HR to financial or something, you know, and I'd be like, ooh, let me talk to Mary. Like,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
So it was always getting other people to introduce me to other people, right? So I mean, hell, man, you've got like Chris Moeller on. Like, you should be like, hey, introduce me to like 5 dudes I want to get on the show. Like,
Yeah, well, I'm in the stage right now where I've done, like, I wouldn't never call it networking because you look at it like I'm making all these friends in BMX. But throughout all these years, I've made all these friends.
yeah,
And then now that I've given this podcast an official name, I've
Yeah.
just been like, oh, hey, I could talk to this person and this
Yes.
person and this
I
person.
know. You just pick them out of it. And again, you're right. You're not building friends, but these are colleagues. These are you know, potential guests and whatever the case may be. Like, we can be friends without like having to go to, you know, each other's weddings.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we can still be friends, and we don't talk every day. That's fine too.
Yep.
Like, you know, I don't know who came up with these rules around, you know, what makes a person a friend and a whatever. Anyways, so that's how I built it over time, was like just getting other people to introduce me to other
Yeah,
people.
that's awesome. And I'm sure in doing the podcast too, what I've noticed is that when I do one, like say with Chris Muller, I get A, B, and C person who
Yep.
I know who like comment on it, and then I realize, oh, they would be perfect for it, and then
Yeah.
it popcorns where at first I was
That's
like,
exactly
man.
right. Yep. That's exactly right. So like what I do is like with that, I keep a spreadsheet and I just keep plugging those names in so I don't lose track of it.
Yep.
And then when I'm like, oh, you know what? Like I've had a bunch of old guys on the show talking about the 90s BMX. Time to have, let's get a new school guy on. You know what I mean? Then you can
Yep.
be like, oh, let me look in my Rolodex here, in my spreadsheet and just pull out,
Yep.
whatever.
I haven't intentionally been getting all these people who are owners or people who started companies.
Yeah.
It's just kind of how it's happened. So I've sort of been
It's cool.
leaning into it
I'm
because
enjoying watching it. Yeah, I find it really the business decisions and why people have chosen, because like S&M and Hoffman, like that was our main competition
mm-hmm.
back in the day. Like that's the people we went head to head against,
Yeah.
And we all had very different ways of looking what good was. Good looked very different to us than it did to Matt, than it did to Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And
it says, go ahead.
And vice versa.
And it says something about the fact that all three of those companies still exist today, and
Yep.
that good doesn't have to be one
Right.
specific thing.
No, there's no right answer. There's just hard work.
Yep.
That's what. There's no best rider in the world. There's just the hardest working rider in the world. Like
It's definitely true.
so the same with the companies. So it's, to me, it's all about the effort. There's no trophy, that you get
Yep.
at the end of the day. So, but you got to believe in something. You got to fight for something, right? We believed that the way we were going about innovation was really, really important. Matt thought that making the bikes and things more accessible to people was more important.
Mm-hmm.
Chris thought staying to your roots was the most important thing. You know what I mean? So like, all very different groups. We all thought we were right, and it turns out we all were right at the same time. Like, shocker.
Pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. But at the time, when you're in the whirlwind, you don't think about it that way. You think it's us versus them.
Oh, for sure. When you're at work and you have two people with ideas, you're like, my idea's better. I want to do my
exactly.
idea.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, because I mean, like, as soon as Standard was going for a little while, like we had all these copycat sort of companies
Mm-hmm.
appear. And it was like, really? Like, really?
Well,
Okay.
that's the way it's always been in BMX and probably always will be. But it shows that the ones that are doing what they really believe in are the ones that usually, unless something really bad happens, stay around.
Yep. But again, like you look at, I go back to what we were talking about earlier about brand. Like that's the one thing that Hoffman, S&M, and Standard did really good. It was brand. Like,
yeah.
Like the brands are strong. And so they can weather economic downturns. They can weather, oh, we're going to do all completes. Oh, just kidding. We're not doing completes. And they can turn into like, a custom boutique. Every frame is a painting place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like Rick could launch completes next week and he'd probably sell out of them, because it's a brand at that point. So.
Holy heck, that's an idea. A company that makes there's no sacrifices with the complete. It's just the best. It's still a Standard or it's still an S&M, but it is a complete with the best parts on it.
Right.
People would buy that.
All handcraft. Of course they would. Yeah, of course they would.
People would line up to buy that. I know a guy in the city I live in who makes bikes. It's called Groovy Cycle Works.
Yeah.
And he opens his list at the beginning of the year, and it's closed pretty quickly after that because he knows how much he can do in a year, and he makes it, and that's what he does. Again,
like he's built a brand, he's built a reputation. Yeah, because I mean, like, I always wanted, I always thought that biking would be part of my, my life, but I never wanted it to be part of my job. Like after the bike company, you know, I had, excuse me,
You're good. No worries.
I had offers to do, you know, designs and other things and be a part of other stuff. And I was like, nah, like I did it already. Like I did that thing. And, you know, I wanted biking to be my thing again and not a thing that I did for everybody. Cause again, it became a show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much. And so I needed it to be my thing again, you know?
I think that's a struggle that a lot of people deal with. And I have been having not an identity crisis, but an identity realization lately when I hear big, like top of name professional riders talking about the things that they do because they know that they need to do that to stay professional and stay where they're at. And then I think about like, I'm literally only doing anything that I do because it's me. And I'm building something that's sustaining itself based on that, and how like it's a crazy thing to see and realize.
Yeah, it is. Well, again, like you know, it comes down to what are your goals? Like, you know, do you want to, you know, so, I mean, some guys want to be buried with you know, an old 90s Wilkerson frame between their legs, you know, like, you know what I mean? And that's cool, you know. Other people like what's the Webby guy, right? In England, I love that Webby guy, like he's great. But he stopped competing, right? He just does Instagram and stuff, and like he races cars or something on the side. I don't know what he does, but he's fun to watch, you know. But he just, you know, he probably was like, you know what, I'm done with the whole show thing, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting when you realize that it becomes a show.
Yeah,
very
right. That's how. Yep. Yeah, it's a really interesting. Yeah, you just, like I said, like don't. My advice for anybody coming up in BMX is, you know, is don't get caught off guard. Like have goals, have dreams that are not just like you know, up there holding a Nora cup with, you know, Huckster handing it to you and spitting out beer in your face, you know, like have some real goals and things you want to achieve and work towards those things, you know. They'll change and they'll be different. But if your goal is just to be as good as you can be, like that's cool, you know, but at some point, you know, you might tear an ACL and then what, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So you got to watch out for yourself, you know, because I mean, when I was doing all that stuff, I mean, none of us had health insurance. I gave myself stitches like 3 times in the, you know, yeah.
I did that one time, but just because I wanted to say I did.
No, I literally had to, otherwise, like it wouldn't have stopped bleeding. Like,
oh, jeez.
But we, you know, we were working towards something. You know, that's why we did all that.
Yeah, man.
You know.
So, you also have your YouTube channel.
I do. Yeah, that's part of the podcast. What I did is when I started the podcast, I always wanted to make video a part of it, but nobody wanted to come on camera. But thanks to the pandemic, like nobody cares anymore.
Oh, that's a great, I never even realized that. But yeah.
So then I just turned it into doing video stuff, and then I take the audio from the video and ship that in the podcast channel, and then I just leave the video on YouTube. It's great. So,
and so you have that, but then you also have, there's the BMX YouTube as well.
Yeah, I've got where I just post like old videos and stuff that I have. That's the KRT stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I link all these.
A lot of links to stuff.
BMX YouTube channel. I love that I can just do this while we're sitting here talking though. And then what would you call the other one? How would you label that?
Which one? The BMX one?
No, the podcast type channel.
That's Schmidt list too.
So you just call that like a...
It's just...
it's a podcast channel? Like...
Yeah, podcast channel. Yeah, okay. YouTube podcast.
All right, got it.
all that Schmidt list. My wife thought it would be funny because she thought it'd be funny for me to invite people to come on my Schmidt list.
Oh no, it is
So,
great.
so she, and I think we had like a half a bottle of wine, and I was like, I'm buying the domain. And then here we are 5 years later.
That is funny.
Who knew?
But it's going well, it seems. You're still doing it. You're 200 something episodes in. I can't wait to be that far in.
I know, it's fun. And like I said, like I don't do anything to promote this stuff. It's just very organic, you know?
Yeah.
And I like it that way. Like I'm not trying to make money off of this show. Like I said, the book, I'm not doing this to like become internet famous and do whatever. Like these are things that I wanted, you know, I wanted to write a book by time before I'm 50. I wanted to do a show and a podcast because I thought I would be able to learn a lot from other people in this way. And, you know, these are all like almost like buckety list type things versus like trying to be famous and
trying to pull a Gary V and do it.
Yeah, I know it's not hashtag hustle culture, bro. Like, to me, like it's about challenging myself, just like I did on the bike, right? Like put myself in comfortable situations and see how I do. Like that's where I thrive, and that's when I feel good. You know, if I'm sitting there, you know, binging Netflix and you know what I mean? Like that's when I feel like
I literally can't do that anymore. I used to, like my girlfriend and I used to binge through stuff on Netflix and like The Walking Dead.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I was into that too until like season like 3 or 4. Then I was like, what is going on?
You can't do that to Glenn. We're done.
Yeah.
But that was it. Like we found The Walking Dead after it was already a thing, so we binged all of it.
Yeah, you just tear through it. Yeah.
We used to do that with so many different things, but then I got deep into this YouTube stuff, and I got into a point of accountability with myself that I feel bad just watching 2 episodes of something while we're eating dinner.
Yep, exactly. That's literally the same story with me years ago with this. It's like there's so much more value I have to offer into the world, and it was a really interesting thing because what I found was I was waiting for people to give me permission to do these things, but I didn't realize that. Like, so I would tell people like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this podcast, and people would be like, great, you should.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, but you know, do you really think I should? You know, and it's like, they don't care. Like, what they're like, nobody's going to tell you to go write a book or start a YouTube channel or do whatever. Like, nobody's going to go tell you that.
Nope.
Like, but I kept waiting, like I'm waiting for people to give me permission to do these things. And then when I found out that wasn't going to happen, I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to go do it. Like, bye.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because it was a similar thing for me in that I wasn't waiting for people to tell me to do something or tell me that I could do something. It was that I was trying to lean too much onto people to help me, like, and be a part of something so that I didn't have to do it all myself. And that led me to try to just waiting on other people who like weren't as passionate about this idea as I was. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was just like, it was my idea, not their idea. And so that's like where part of my YouTube channel started.
Oh man.
I had the idea for it a year before I even did it, and I was like, yeah, we could make this YouTube channel, we could play games of bike and film stuff at Ray's every time we go up there. And my buddy was like, yeah, that'd be cool, but that's where it ends.
Sure. Let's do it. Right.
That ends with, yeah, it'd be cool. And then I realized like you realize very shortly after I realized
nobody's gonna care as much as you do.
Exactly. And if you wait on other people to get things done.
I can't tell you how many ideas have died because I was like, hey, are you coming? And they're like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute, you know. And you're like, oh, you know what? The whole fire is gone. So.
Yep. But Kurt, we just did about 3 hours, so I don't want to take too much of your time.
This is why I do a podcast and stuff, because I can jaw on for a while. So.
That's okay. I love it. I just I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, I really appreciate you having me on in the consideration. It means a lot to me. I'm constantly super thankful to be remembered in the biking community, and that I had a tiny bit of impact on it means a lot to me, that people remember that stuff, because it was a fantastic time in my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But it's great that you had a little bit of an impact on folks, and I feel really humbled by that. And that's why, like I said, like I love posting stuff to the Instagram stuff and having people go, "Oh my gosh," and I'm like, "Really? It's still good?"
Yeah, it's still
You
good.
like me. You really like me.
Yeah.
It's great.
funny.
No, it's good. It feels good. And not necessarily, like I said, from a plain ego standpoint, but just from a time served, right? Like a energy put into a sport, to feel recognized by those folks that are still in it and around it, like on a daily basis, is just I'm really humbled about it. So thank you for all you do, Rant, because I really enjoy your show and the channel you're doing, and anybody else out there who's doing this sort of stuff, like, man, more power to you. Just keep it going. It's the type of stuff that this is the sand between the boulders that keeps BMX really growing. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I really enjoyed getting to sit down for 3 hours and just get to learn about so much more. And that's probably my favorite part of BMX and what I'm doing, is that I didn't grow up knowing a lot because I didn't watch videos. I just made videos. So I get to like learn from the people like you about what you did, and that's my favorite part, and
That's crazy.
I love it.
Well, when you come to Minneapolis, I'll tell you all the stories I can't talk about on recording. So
Yeah, let me just stop it real quick, and you can start telling me.
I'll tell you all the stories that will make your hair grow really long. Oh wait, I've already told you. Hey-o.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
What's that book?
Anybody wants to come and hang out, like you get me and John Buttigieg and a bunch of other folks together. Like it's oof, man.
Oh, I can't imagine.
It'll make your hair stand up.
Yep. So the Little Book of Marketing, right there.
Networking.
Little Book of Networking. My bad. It's been 3 hours.
I know we talked a lot about marketing.
Little Book of Networking, available right now on Amazon.
Yeah,
Link is in the description down below. And I appreciate your time. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for, like I said, thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody who I don't know why you stuck around for this long, but if you did, I appreciate you, and yeah, thank you for all the support.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.